Hello, very good morning to you. Welcome to The Big Issue. The Big Issue is your platform for incisive analysis and riveting conversation. My name is Akufo-Addo. The show, as always, is live and interactive. You can join the discussion via WhatsApp line 020-444-7033 or 0549-986-996. We are live on 97.3 City FM on our socials and, of course, on ChannelOne television. We're a few days away from Inauguration Day, where a new president and a new government will take over the reins of power. President Akufo-Addo delivered his last State of the Nation address, where he said that he was leaving the country in a good place. The economy was rebounding, and he did appear to say that everything was on course. Analysts, however, have disagreed, as is expected, on several things he has said, especially the economy, the fight against corruption, and many others. Our job this morning is to bring you those analyses from persons who know the matter. What is the verdict on corruption? What is the verdict even on the free SHS and the way forward for that? What is the verdict on the economy? What is the verdict on general governance issues? We'll look at all of that today. Indeed, some verdict was delivered on December 7, but will we say that that verdict, really spoke to the performance of the presidency of Akufo-Addo? Can we say so, clearly, given that he wasn't on the ballot, or maybe because it was his record that was on trial? We can safely conclude that the verdict of December 7 will speak to his legacy. We'll also look at the 8th Parliament. Many have said that that Parliament did well. Others think that it didn't do well and that it was a worst Parliament of the Fourth Republic. People think that had it not been the hung nature of that Parliament, a lot of things bad would have happened. We'll also look at that and also do a prognosis of what the 9th Parliament should look like. Who should lead that Parliament, given the overwhelming numbers the NDC has or will have in that Parliament? Would that become a rubber stamp Parliament? What can we do to ensure that the rigor of Parliament is retained or maintained or is seen in that Parliament? Others will want to compare that to the 1997 to 2001 Parliament, which had President Akufo-Addo, John Mahama, and a few others. The numbers were not close, but that Parliament did a lot of work. J.H. Mensah and co were in that Parliament, and people say that that was the best Parliament in the Fourth Republic. Are we going to see a similar thing, or we're just going to see a rubber stamp Parliament where everything from the executive will pass? We'll look at all of that. And also, the matter of the mandamus ruling from the High Court. The court was said to have sat at 8 a.m. Anytime the court sits and is rendering that verdict, we'll go live to the place and then bring you that verdict and then do some analysis on the results or on the ruling on the program as well. Once again, my name is Akufo-Addo. This is The Big Issue. I'll take a short break, return, introduce my guests, provide some updates, and we'll get a discussion underway. Don't go away.
Are you ready for a show that the whole family can enjoy? Join us on our fun educational adventures as we discover interesting places, meet amazing people like a pilot, a soap maker, a chocolate maker, and more. That's not all. You will learn about our culture, explore musical instruments, symbols, and cloth, learn all about kente, gather around and listen to our folk tales and discover the interesting history behind our stories.
Wow, this show is really informative.
Yeah! We'll also have fun experiments. Whoa! And lots of art activities.
Look at my spider.
So beautiful.
You definitely don't want to miss the Wonder Space Show with Miss Natalie.
Wonder Space!
Watch the Wonder Space Show on Saturdays at 12 noon only on ChannelOne TV.
You're welcome back. This is The Big Issue on 97.3 City FM on ChannelOne Television and on our socials. We are happy to hear from you on the matters we have advertised and on the matters we will talk about this morning. We are looking at the state of the nation. The president delivered. The president says that the economy was rebounding. Ghana was in a good place and he was leaving the country in a safe position or in a safe mode. Do you agree? He said quite a number of things on corruption, on governance generally, on the free SHS, and on the economy. What is your circumstance? What is your situation? Do you think everything the president said was on point, or you have a different view? We will subject what the president said yesterday to some analysis in the studios. Of course, others outside of the studio have said quite a number of things about the economy and his fight and commitment to the fight against corruption, etc. But I want to hear from you on that. We'll also look at the 8th Parliament. What has it achieved? What were the failures? What expectations are there for the 9th Parliament? Did the speakership do anything to help the situation in that Parliament? People, of course, at the beginning of that Parliament said you needed an experienced parliamentarian to do the job. We saw Speaker Babin. Were you happy with how he delivered his job? Others said that his experience was to be thanked for a lot of the things and how he steered Parliament. Do you agree with that? And who should lead the 9th Parliament? How should the 9th Parliament be? How should we look at it? NDC has overwhelming numbers in that house, and MPP is in opposition. Afenyo is being retained as the minority, as the leader of the opposition. MPP will be the minority leader in that house. We want to know your thoughts on that as well, and what generally you think of the 8th Parliament and what you expect of the 9th Parliament. We'll also look at the presidential inauguration in a bit, but there is a court matter. The court will pronounce on the MPP's application for mandamus, or the writ of mandamus, to compel the EC to do some declarations. The NDC disagrees with that. NDC is filed an affidavit in opposition. They argued it last week. The court will sit and rule on that matter, and depending on what the court says, we may have some quick resolution to those matters. So our eyes and ears are in the court. Just when things begin, we will take you there and then have the ruling and have some discussion on that. So we have a full plate for you this morning. But just to provide you some update, the President Akufo-Addo has expressed confidence in the state of the nation as he prepares to leave office, declaring that he is leaving behind a Ghana that is working. He made this statement during his final State of the Nation address, delivered in Parliament on Friday, January 3, 2025. Reflecting on his two-term tenure, President Akufo-Addo highlighted the progress Ghana has made under his leadership. He credited transformative policies in education, healthcare, agriculture, digitization, energy, governance, infrastructure, and trade for reshaping the nation and fostering resilience among its people. He expressed optimism about Ghana's future, citing the nation's steady economic rebound, thriving institutions, and a secure democratic environment. He emphasized the empowerment of the youth, the flourishing of the arts, and the safety and dignity of the elderly as key indicators of a nation on the right path.
President Akufo-Addo on Friday, January 3, 2025, in accordance with the Constitution, presented his final State of the Nation address to Parliament ahead of the handing over ceremony on January 7, 2025. Now, during his presentation, he noted that he is leaving behind a robust and resilient economy, contrary to assertions of a broke economy.
At the moment, I'm able to say with confidence that the crisis is over, that the economy has recovered strongly and faster than projected. The economy is rebounding strongly. Our fiscal position is more stable, and our debt sustainability has significantly improved. These developments have provided a solid foundation for sustained growth and development, ensuring that the sacrifices made by bondholders and other stakeholders will not be in vain, but rather the basis of Ghana's economic revival. Mr. Speaker, the country is not broke, as some propagandists want us to believe. We're handing over the country with gross international reserves of almost 8 billion United States dollars. This is more than the 6.2 billion United States dollars of gross international reserves my administration inherited in 2017.
Well, President Akufo-Addo also expressed his sympathy to traders of the Kantamanto market who had their shops destroyed by the fire outbreak.
I want to put on record that I'm deeply saddened by the devastating fire at Kantamanto market, which took place yesterday, and has left many traders and their livelihoods in ruins. My thoughts and prayers are with those affected, and I extend heartfelt sympathy to the hard-working traders who have lost their goods and investments. We will work with relevant agencies to ascertain the causes of the fire and to provide the needed support. As a nation that is united in compassion and solidarity to help those who have suffered losses, together we can extend a helping hand to our fellow Ghanaians in need during this challenging time.
President Akufo-Addo also says his fight against the illegal mining menace, also known as Galamsey, directly caused the loss of parliamentary seats in the 2020 elections, which impacted his second term in office.
Mr. Speaker, in my inaugural speech at my swearing in my first term on 7th January 2017, and early on in that term, I made a public commitment to Galamsey, the phenomenon that had been ravaging our environment and destroying our lands and water bodies in the pursuit of mining our gold. I knew and was very much aware that fighting Galamsey was not a universally popular position for a president to take. But I felt strongly enough about the need to protect our environment to say I was prepared to put my presidency on the line in the defense of our lands and water bodies. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, the fight against Galamsey led directly to the loss by my party of several parliamentary seats in the 2020 elections, and to the makeup of this 8th Parliament, which affected the implementation of my policy agenda and impacted the second term of my presidency. I welcome the many loud converts to the fight against Galamsey that suddenly appeared in the run-up to the 2024 elections. And I pray that more and more of us get to embrace the need for the protection of our lands and water bodies.
President Akufo-Addo also disclosed that 3 of the Agenda 111 hospitals have been commissioned with active works ongoing on the remaining projects. He was, however, optimistic that the incoming government would ensure the completion of the remaining projects.
I had the utmost pleasure to commission 3 of the district hospitals. Progress of works on the other 98 active sites range from 5% for sites whose work commenced recently to 95% at other sites. I'm hoping that the incoming administration will ensure that the project is completed, put our health infrastructure on a sound footing.
He noted that all his appointees who were alleged to have engaged in corrupt practices were duly investigated and exonerated of any wrongdoings.
We also enacted key laws such as the Fiscal Responsibility Act, the Revenue Administration Amendment Act, and the Anti-Money Laundering Act, all of which have strengthened our institutional framework to combat corruption and ensure accountability. We ensured that all allegations of corruption leveled against appointees were duly investigated by independent institutions of state, which generally dismiss them as unfounded.
Well, during the presentation of President Akufo-Addo's final State of the Nation address, an unfortunate incident happened where his aide-de-camp, Colonel Isaac Amponsa, unfortunately collapsed while standing guard during the speech.
Moreover, the Law House, a modern facility for the Office of the Attorney General, has now been completed. Mr. Speaker,
After the presentation, the Minority Caucus, led by the Deputy Minority Leader, Emmanuel Akufo-Addo, reacted, deeming the Akufo-Addo government as the worst government of the Fourth Republic leaving office.
We have come to the end of the road for what has been undoubtedly the worst government under the Fourth Republic. Honourable Speaker, this record was confirmed on December 7th when the people of Ghana returned the most overwhelming and emphatic vote of rejection of any government ever witnessed under the Fourth Republic. Mr. President, you will be remembered as the first president who was cushioned by the IMF when you began, and you are still being cushioned at the end of your term. Let me remind His Excellency, Honourable Speaker, that his tenure in office will remain a timely reminder of how not to govern the country.
However, the Majority Caucus, led by Alexander Apenyomakin, expressed gratitude to President Akufo-Addo, noting that history would be his best judge.
History, in its fair judgment, will state that there came an Akufo-Addo whose record in the educational sector of our country was unmatched and unequaled. Mr. Speaker, this is a man who is never afraid of challenges that confront him. Mr. Speaker, the Agenda 111, a very ambitious policy to revive our health sector and to provide for the needs, the health needs of the many vulnerable communities, Mr. Speaker, which is also unmatched, is there for all of us to see.
All right, so that was a wrap of what happened in Parliament yesterday. You heard from the President himself, from the two leaders of the House, of course, Deputy Minority Leader Emmanuel Akufo-Addo and the Majority Leader Alexander Apenyomakin. Today on the program, we have the Honorable Seth Champon, the Eastern Regional Minister, himself a former MP, Inusa Fuseni, former MP, Tamale Central, also a former minister, Dr. Eric Osai-Kwapon, CDD Fellow Political Analyst, and Joe Jackson, the Director of Operations, Dales Financial Services, and also a financial and economic analyst. These are my guests this morning. So gentlemen, good morning. You're welcome to the program. Happy New Year to you, Honorable Minister. It's good seeing you again. How have you been?
I'm very well. Many happy returns to you, sir.
Yes, it's good.
How have you been yourself?
By grace, we've been fine.
Wonderful.
The Christmas season has been okay.
Right.
Working from the elections into the new year, and so we are fine. But what happened? The elections were such. The elections did not really go well for you. What happened? what might have gone wrong for you in your region especially?
Thank you very much. Once again, let me first and foremost, before I proceed, join in the President's expression of pain in what happened at Kantamanto. Kantamanto is a place where some of us have us, where our forebears started trading. You know, I was born in Kweo, and that is where most of our people who came in here to start some economic exercise traded, and so it's so painful to see the entire place burn down that way. I sympathize with them, and I know that we'll go through it. My region, I think at the time I entered in as a regional minister, we had 25 seats. We're hopeful to maintain that. I think we lost by one number. We came to 24. That's where we are headed now. I can say that all the predictions and the pollsters have all been shown that the real poll is what the people go out there and decide on. So it is something that nobody predicted, nobody saw it coming, not even the best of analysts in respect of security and even projections. And so to us all, it was a big surprise. But it has happened. And that is exactly what the people chose. And for us, we respect the opinion and the verdict of the people.
So the president spoke yesterday. For him, he's leaving behind a country or a Ghana that is working. What will be your highlights from the president's address? Of course, I know you may largely share in what the president delivered, because that is a collective, the collective card from what all of you have helped him do as ministers. But what were your highlights of what he said yesterday to the nation?
One good thing that I really was happy about was how we should continue to strengthen our chieftaincy institutions. So this is one matter that I knew about until, but when I got to become a regional minister, I really faced it in reality.
The chieftaincy
I knew that the chieftaincy institution, for me, is the bedrock of our national security. And we live in a sub-region where it's very turbulent. If you look at what's happening in the Sahel and our neighbors, like the president said yesterday, so far within the sub-region, we are the only country who've not been hardly hit by terrorism, even though we have picked signs and seen some stuff in times past. But this is something we need to jealously, continuously protect. And the bedrock of our national security is the chieftaincy institution.
How is that?
I'll give you the reason. If you go into every community, you have a chief. Our chiefs have assets. They have lands. They're the custodians of the lands. And so you cannot walk into any community and begin any exercise without going to pay homage to the chieftaincy establishment of that area. The chiefs have their own local security, which is the community. We respect our overlords. We always revere them. And so you cannot just stand up and speak to any chief anyhow in our community and get away without being questioned or having one sanction or the other. And so to me, it is something we have to continuously cherish and protect. That aside, but for that, there will be a lot of chaos in our country, because anybody can walk in. Some of the issues our neighbors face is this: because of the structure and the nature of our chieftaincy institution, working, even as it is still yet to be improved, with established constitutional institutions, it gives us that synergy for security. And for me, that is the way I see it, and I know it is the reality. So it makes the state spend a lot on chieftaincy institutions. If you look at most of the things which are done by the national security, we spend a lot on chieftaincy issues, because today there's a chieftaincy dispute there's a chieftaincy dispute where our people recognizes chiefs. And so when people rise up and they know that they have some royalty around them and they can be elevated to become leaders, because community, the society reveres and recognizes chiefs. So people compete for space in there. And so we always have to ensure that there is stability in the communities. You can sit in the Regional Security Council and hold a meeting for a whole meeting and you only discuss chieftaincy issues. So it tells you how it consumes us, but at the same time, it is a very positive institution in our stability.
I see, that's quite interesting. It's interesting that you say so, because the general thinking is that there's a lot of rival chiefs here and there, and that itself is a threat to national security. When you go to many of the areas, there's one chief and there's a rival chief, and sometimes you politicians also get in there. So when, let's say, the NDC is in power, this chief is recognized, this other rival one is not recognized. If NPP comes to power, this other one is recognized. So that in itself, people say, is a threat to national security. And if you can explain a bit what you mean by the strength of the chieftain institutions we have in Ghana, is contributing to why we've not had a lot of the insecurities that our neighbors have had. Because and that when people come, they come to pay homage. But when these miscreants who want to do bad things come, they won't come and pay, they will come and hide. So I'm not sure they will come and show their face and pay homage to the chiefs. You know, you need to clarify.
So how do we gather intelligence? We gather intelligence by collecting information around the community. Everybody needs to protect their chief. So you realize that even without established state law enforcement agents, our own traditional people work with some aura of authority, and these are the royals' protection. And you go to every chieftaincy institution. Have you ever found a chief work alone in the community when he's coming in state? He comes with a whole retinue of men and women following him. So that by itself gives you some idea of what we are talking about, the institution of chieftaincy. And so we need to respect that. You know, science has some understanding in officers that like repels like, because it is a very positive establishment. And in our definition and in our system, people want recognition. And once you are a chief, you come everywhere, we rise up for you, because by our nature and our training, we are supposed to respect authority, and that is the local authority, aside constitutionally established authority. So these are things that we must encourage ourselves to know and respect. Until we get educated, people will see it to be otherwise. When miscreants come into a community, who points them to us that there are miscreants who have entered our community? Those who are existing and live in the community, who knows their neighbors. They're able to tell who are guests, who are newcomers. So if you don't have these establishments, you will fail. That's why I tell you that they are the bedrock of our state security, because they are the ones who come and offer you information that we found these people here, they don't belong here, we don't know them, please approach them and find out who they are and where they are coming from. It's something which is very useful. So the same way, because it is something of relevance to us, if you don't work at it, it can be destroyed. And when you find that institution collapsing, then your state is collapsing. I'll give you a typical example. Unfortunately, I have to cite some neighbors of ours. You go into communities, because the established local authority, the traditional leaders, do not own assets. Anybody walks into a community and acquires parcel of space, and they own that space, and they begin to assert some rights within the community, and nobody's able to checkmate them. But come here, if you are within the confines of Ghana, wherever, and you begin to do such things, you find the royalty first and foremost come after you before established enforcement comes with you as well. So that's why I gave that assertion that it is the bedrock of our national security.
Very well. Great. Mr. Joe Jackson, good morning. Happy New Year to you. Welcome to the program. We had a president yesterday, and he appeared to be saying that he was leaving behind an economy that was rebounded, and indeed, he did say that the GDP figures for the third quarter, even the second quarter, were north of 7% or so, and that, you know, the economy for 2024 was going to grow at an average of 7% or a little below that, which beats the expectation of many people. In essence, the economy was returning or has returned to pre-COVID levels. What really is your state of the economy? I mean, taking a lead from what the president has said.
Good morning, and it's good to see you again. I want to acknowledge the presence of someone I'm proud to call my big brother, Honorable Rashid Pelpo. Good morning to you too. Listen, with all respect to the president, I have to disagree with him. It's to be expected that he will talk up his performance at this time. As he's about to leave, he will talk it up. But really, is he in touch with how we feel and perceive this economy? For starters, how can he talk about returning to pre-COVID levels when he's still under an IMF injunction? When in the last 2 years, he took money away, 60 billion cedis from high net worth individuals in this country as tax in the domestic debt exchange program. He took money from the ordinary person. How can he say we have returned to pre-COVID levels when 2 years ago, 2022, after COVID, if I gave you 600 cedis, it was $100. If I gave you 6,000 cedis, it was $1,000. Today, if I give you 600 cedis, it is $32. If I give you 6,000 cedis, it is $320. 68% of your purchasing power has been wiped out. What are we talking about? I'm talking about the difference between 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago maximum, and today. Not 10 years, not 5 years, not even 4 years. Please. I have to disagree with him. How can you say we are, what do you call it? We are out of the woods when we can't balance a budget, when we have to borrow to consume, borrow to do everything? How can he say we are out of the woods when before COVID, outside the multilateral and bilateral agencies, people were prepared to lend money to us? And today, we are a pariah amongst nations. We are on our knees. We declared bankruptcy, and we are barely about to start to pay. And nobody will lend money to us on the commercial market. What are we talking about? How can he say he left us better off when I'm sure Honorable Rashid Pelpo will tell you that in the north, food prices have risen remarkably, very high. There's a famine in certain places in the north. And there's no official program to alleviate this issue. How can we say we've been left with a better economy when cocoa, which has been the bedrock of our economy forever, is 30% of pre-COVID production levels? And the Cocoa Board has just issued another warning that we should expect an even lower yield this season. How can we say that the economy is better when treasury bill rates are still at 25%? How can we say the economy is better when inflation over this period went as high as 50%, came to 30%, and is now at around 23%, 25%? Please. And bear in mind, though, nobody should say prices have started falling. It is inflation that has fallen. If 3 years ago, if January 2022, you bought an item for 100 cedis, and the end of year inflation was 50% like it was, it means that at the end of the year, you paid 150 cedis for this item. If in 2023 inflation was at 33%, it means you paid 33% of the 150 cedis. That's another 50 cedis. That takes you to 200 cedis. If this year or last year, 2024, we said inflation ended at 25%, it is 25% of 200 cedis, which is another 50 cedis. That means the item that you bought for 100 cedis in January 2023, you will buy today at 250 cedis. It is inflation has fallen. Prices have not fallen. When we say you vibed up 68% of our standard of living, how many people can say that their salaries have risen up by 68%? That's ridiculous. Truly, from where I sit, I cannot agree with him in any shape or form ever that the economy is better than it was when he came in 2016, or that it has even returned to pre-COVID levels.
I see.
Listen,
yes,
3 years ago,
okay,
we were down on our knees. I say that this economy was in a coma. We've been resuscitated. We've been taken off life support, but we are still in intensive care. And anybody who says that Ghana is still not broke is not being realistic.
Great. I was just about getting to that point. Yourself and your boss have many times said Ghana is broke, but he said that the country, and I'm quoting, the country is not broke, as some propagandists want us to believe. We are handing over the country with gross international reserves of almost $8 billion. This is more than the $6.2 billion my administration inherited in 2017. At least that is a fact that indicates some positivity, at least in the economy. So it doesn't look like everything is gloom. There are spots of positives, and this is one of them. The gross reserve, the international reserves, at 8 billion, he took it from 6.2 billion, and so we cannot say that Ghana is broke. That is what he's saying, and so by extension, he calls you and your boss and all those people saying Ghana is broke propagandists.
Oh, I'm proud to be able to take on the label propagandist, if that is what it takes to call broke. Listen, I'm fine. I'm very proud to hold up a placard and say I'm a propagandist because I say Ghana is broke. Ghana is broke, right? And broke cannot be remedied by just international reserves. Please. I thought this was the government that said if the fundamentals are wrong, the exchange rate will
expose you,
will betray you.
Will expose you, yes.
Yes, where's the exchange rate? Where's the inflation rate? Where are interest rates? Where is the unemployment rate? Please. Ghana is broke because we still cannot balance a budget and we still have to borrow to consume. That is why we are broke. By our definition, if you are paid and at the end of the month, you still have to borrow to consume, not borrow to undertake infrastructure, borrow to consume. In my books, you are broke. And whatever, I'm proud to be called a propagandist. But listen, let's also be clear. The reserve situation is good. And one of the things we say is that even if there's an Akan proverb that says, even if you hate the hair, you should give credit to its speed. So we give credit to that. And I've been on record saying that one of the things we should not do is to throw the baby out with the bathwater. The Gold for Reserves, Gold for Oil program has improved our reserves dramatically over this year. In fact, this claiming it is now 8 billion when it was 6. is not exactly the full truth. At the beginning of this year, we were down to 0.8%. 0.8 of a month's reserves. What happened this year is that we undertook the Gold for Reserves, Gold for Oil program. And even though the execution was ambiguous, even though we may have had problems with the execution, some good came out of it. And this Gold for Oil has given this government maybe its single claim to fame that it improves our reserve situation. That only happened this year. I tell you this, I give them full credit for the Gold for Oil program. I give them full credit, and I urge the incoming administration to look at it carefully and to implement it even better than this ambiguous implementation that was done. But it did still deliver some good, so I give them credit for that. But that's only one spot amidst many other spots. Please, the overall picture is not good. So as much as I will agree with the issue of increasing reserves, as much as I would say that that is one bright spot in our present reality, please, the overall picture is still not changed. Maybe in the midst of the gloom, there's a bright spot.
I see.
Maybe in the midst of the gloom, there's light at the end of the tunnel. But at the moment, we are still broke.
Great. Interesting thoughts there. You hang in there for me. I'll come to you on other things, social things, and what the implications of those have been on the economy and what we can do moving forward. But the Honorable Rashid Popo joined us briefly for a comment or two on the state of the nation. I'll take his comment, then we can come back in studio where we have the Honorable Sete Champon, the Honorable Inus Afuseni, and we'll do our discussions in-house. Hello, good morning, Doc. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, good morning.
Yes.
Good morning, my brother.
Yes, you were in the chamber. You were in the chamber yesterday. What will you say was the highlight of what the president said about the state of the nation?
Well, I sat there watching the president, and I was beginning to imagine whether he and reality are the same, whether he was speaking reality or he was speaking imagination. This is a man who the Ghanaian has a lot of confidence in, that in his regime, so much was going to change. And in the end, so much had gone wrong. And then he's given the opportunity to tell us the state of the nation. And then his whole account of the state of the nation is to present a picture contrary to the expectations of anybody and contrary to the expectation of the real issues on the ground. At one point, I turned around, I sat with Haruna, Honorable Haruna Idrisu. I turned around and asked him whether the man in reality, whether he understood what he was saying or he was just reading what was written for him. Because we all were here when he talked about the need to fight Galamsey. He pitched his presidency against it. And in the end, Galamsey became an area which the nation appeared to be helpless about. So much was going wrong and nothing was being done. At least not much was done, and things were going so terribly bad. And this is a man who now praised himself for Galamsey. And then the economy, having sunk to this level, to the distress of almost every Ghanaian, the pain touched the nerve of almost everybody. Then he now tells us, well, I'm living with you a good economy, a sound economy. And at each time, you begin to wonder, is that the situation we are facing, or is it something that we really need to examine, whether it is true that we are suffering or the nation is bad? Did Ghanaians vote without knowing that things were better than what they imagined? So I didn't see much of reality in the presentation he did. And when he talked about chieftaincy, what he has done to create a situation of peace, and then you imagine the pain going on in Boko, the destruction of lives there, and all that. Then again, and the fact that
the issue of Boko has been a historical matter. It didn't start in his time. It's been something previous governments have tried to deal with. And so he only came to meet a situation, and he's leaving it as it is, you know. So I'm not sure it would be fair to hang that around his neck with it.
Oh, no. But then ask yourself, the one he claimed success about, did it start in his time? Did the bomb conflict start during Nanado's time? It started long before his time. I mean, he's talking about how successful he has been in security, in providing security, in solving chieftaincy problems. And you see all these things happening around us. Deaths of people, his military turning their guns on human beings, nationals and citizens at election times, killing people without the thought about the fact that they are supposed to protect the lives of people and all that. So if the president comes and is not apologizing, and he's rather telling us how successful he has been in that enterprise, it's a worry to many, many of us. I think that this situation, this space would have been a great opportunity for him to tell the truth about his administration and to ask Ghanaians to forgive him for some of the inadequacies and some of the failures he registered. I mean, because he started off being the favorite of many Ghanaians, and then eventually he slipped, and so much went wrong. And so it's logical for him to have admitted the situation and then go ahead to say, look, we believe that we wish we had done A, B, C, D. We couldn't get there, but this is the reason. And then, go ahead and ask for an apology for Ghanaians.
No, but he tried, not an apology, but he tried to say that there were things he wanted to do, he couldn't finish. He said he had inaugurated or commissioned 3 of the Agenda 111 projects, and it was his expectation and hope that the Mahama administration will work to complete them. So that, in essence, was an admission that he didn't finish something, and that he was hoping that the next regime will continue. And he couldn't have finished everything, but in his view, he's just done enough, and he's left the rest for the next government to do. We say governance is a continuum. Is that not what we say?
My brother, do you think what he was saying was a genuine admission of failure? No, at all. Look, let me tell you. So, what has he done? What has he suggested to do and has finished? Just tell me one. The 350 secondary schools he said he would build, has he built them? The rules that he said he will construct.
Is that free SHS? And from 2017 till now, people go to school for free, and that is massive. That we cannot brush under the carpet. That is a monumental government policy that has touched almost every household across our country. That is to be recognized. What do you say?
That is a policy poorly implemented. I mean, if you look at something done and finished, you see a completeness in the enterprise, in the program, in the policy. The free senior high has become a thorn to many, many, many people because of the many failures it has recorded. I mean, so much, this is not the time to go into those details, but it's not one of the successes you should be talking about when you impose on Ghanaians something you call free, and so much pain is being gone through. I mean, Ghanaians are going through so much pain, so much more money is being spent on one single child. You are unable to provide feeding for them. They go to feed, and some of the times they feed once a day. What are you doing to the psyche of the many young people who are in school? What are we training them to be? I mean, it's terrible. Let's open an occasion to talk about the free senior high, and then you see why His Excellency John Dramani Mahama is proposing to do a review of it. But that's not it at all. Look at the many, many promises of one village, one dam, one district, one factory, $1 million per constituency every year, 350 secondary schools. I can't remember as many of them, but there are a host of promises he has made, has failed almost 100% of them. So what is it that he's presenting to Ghanaians to be happy about? The economy, he says, he was going to, when he was campaigning against His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, he talked about reviving an economy from the Goggisbed economy to an economy that is productive. and that there were not going to be taxes, there were going to be production, there was going to be production and all that. And that we want a situation where Ghanaian, we won't be taking loans, we will be independent of all those things, and Ghana has a lot of money. All those things have become painful rhetorics that we had to incur the pain. So I think that it was a terrible situation for him to try to paint a good picture of himself and the economy he ran. The situation is that I think that he wanted the Hansard to capture a good reflection of him and a good reflection of his government. And I'm sure he failed because it touched the Ghanaian in a negative manner. That this was not what they wanted to hear from the president. I have a lot of respect for the president. I have to admit that. Before he became president, all the symbolic representation he did in the lives of Ghanaians, fighting against injustice, fighting against a champion against the government he wanted to impose and all that. We all looked at him as somebody who, given the opportunity, he could do something. But take it away from him. What he established as a government, he gave it to people who wanted to use the government for self-gain. And they succeeded in doing that. And he failed in supervising that system. He failed completely in projecting a government that should serve the people. And so we all begin to suffer as a result. I don't know how long it will be for us to stabilize this economy. Look at the fact that he has spent lots of our statutory funding in advance. Get fund, road fund, this, that. He has taken money in advance, and then we can be paying for it in 20 years and 15 years. Why are we going to get the money to do all these things? So he has not left us with any good economy. In fact, it is the most painful non-admission of his failure when he said that about the economy, when he said what he said. And I think that it's something that we need to reflect on and then call him to answer for. All the people who work for him in any way that brought us where we are should be questioned. We should run an economy in Ghana which should be satisfying to the people. We should run governance in this country for people who failed to pay for it. We should make it a deterrent for people who run this economy to use it for their own purposes. And you see a lot of it in this governance.
Very well.
And that is unacceptable.
Very well. Thank you so much. The Honorable Dr. Rashid Pelpo, Member of Parliament for West Central on the ticket of the NDC. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. We are very grateful. Great. So we're back in studio, joined in studio by the Honorable Inusa Fuseni, former MP, Tamale Central, former Minister of a number of portfolios. Good morning, good to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we listened to the President, but when I listen to your colleagues speak, like Dr. Rashid Pelpo, it does appear that there's not much the President and his government are leaving behind. Is that an impression, or is that a view you also hold, that the President is not leaving much behind for your new administration or the new administration to take over, and that he is leaving the country not in the manner he views it, that he's leaving behind a Ghana that is working, an economy that is rebounding, an educational system that is on its feet, that is better, a country that has a massive investment in infrastructure in terms of health, etc. Do you have that impression?
First of all, I think I don't know, it would be proper for me to say good morning to you. And we are in 2025.
Yes, Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year to you. Indeed, since we left Parliament so many years ago with my brother and friend, a very respectable gentleman, a former minister, or still the minister, still the minister of Eastern Region. I've not met him. Since.
Whoa.
Yes, and I know him. I worked with him. I know his demeanor. I know how he approaches issues. And so I'll say Happy New Year to you.
Many happy returns.
And I implore you to go back and organize your party. You people should lead your party.
Thank you.
The President came to Parliament on the back of Article 67 of the Constitution, and you know that. And he said before the dissolution of Parliament, not on the dissolution of Parliament. His State of the Nation address said that he was delivering it on the dissolution of Parliament.
Okay.
He said before the dissolution of Parliament. And so Parliament will be dissolved
Monday?
On Monday, midnight. Parliament will be dissolved. And so it is very important that we understand the basis of that. I mean, as members of Parliament and as a lawyer, you know that the state of the economy is very important for our projections, for our understanding of where we are now, where we want to be. For policy formulation, if we are not doing so well, what do we do in order to lift ourselves out of the quagmire of underdevelopment and challenges? And it is only those who are at the helm of the economy, or who are the helm of the country, who understand the levers of the economy, who can tell us the state of the economy. Now, when they do, we also have to do the reality check. They say this is this and that is that. Are they really speaking to the state of the economy? Is that the real state of the economy? So my preliminary remarks is just to get Ghanaians to understand that State of the Nation, the State of the Nation address, and particularly the one before the dissolution of Parliament, is a very important activity. And for me, I thought Nana Akufo-Addo, his first thing should have been that, look, I know we have gone through challenges, and challenges which clearly Eva had the power, the might, the will, the strength, I would have prevented. But we had to go through it. Combination of external factors and a pandemic. And some decisions that we took that we don't think that on hindsight we ought to have taken them. And then come back and tell us how you have been able to overcome all these challenges or to mitigate the effects of those challenges. I didn't see that. And that is what I demand from politicians, including myself, that one, we have a responsibility to be honest to the people. That responsibility, if we don't live by it, we undermine the trust in the political office. And so me and you, who were in political office and who are still, when we talk, the people smile at our backs. They laugh at us. They think that we're not honest, we're not genuine. Okay? And so I was listening to the State of the Nation. At a point, I put up my TV and just walked away. To be honest with you, look, my brother, when we say a country is broke, what does it mean?
A country cannot pay its debt. A country cannot take care of itself.
Does it mean any other thing? A country has gone, California went bankrupt. And then it was announced all well, California had gone bankrupt in America. But people were still immigrating to California. Citizens in California were still feeding themselves. But the state of California could not honor its debts. So they said California was broke. Simple. They had gone bankrupt. Simple. And you say, no, our country is not broke. Tell me, why have we been shut out of the international monetary, financial markets? Why have we been shut out? We've been shut out because the lenders do not think and believe that if we take their money, we'll be able to pay. Why are we doing DDEP? We're doing DDEP because they believe that if they give us some time and they don't mold us with the financial burden of interest, at a point we should be able to get the resources and pay. They're not forgiving us our debt. They say that let's give them some respite and let's force them to take decisions. Spend their money prudently. Let the International Monetary Fund lend us some money so that we can create some financial space. and we invest the money in areas that will be productive, so that we can generate enough money to repay. That's all that the whole thing was about. Okay, and you say we are not broke. If you are not broke, tell me, we are not paying your debts. You're not paying debts. You're going to start paying your debts sometime this year. And you are saying that you have reserves. Like Okonko's father's ten. You go and borrow. You mark your wall with strokes. And the longest stroke represents the person you owe more. And then when they come to ask you, instead of saying that, look, I don't have money, you rather tell the debtor, the person who has come to ask for his debts, that the loan with the longest stroke owe you more than he, the one who's come to ask for his debt, and that he has never come to wake him up in the morning to ask of his debts. That's what Nana Akufo-Addo was telling us. You see, Mabef also says, and Rashid, people put it so succinctly, Dr. Rashid, Honorable Dr. Rashid, when the State of the Nation is given, at the time it is being read out, presented, that's the word the Constitution uses, presented to Parliament, no one is allowed to interrupt. No one. You can rise up on a point of order and say that, well, what the president is saying is not borne out by the facts. You can't say that. And so the Hansard will capture, and in fact, when we're in Parliament, they used to print copies for us. They will print copies for you. I mean, what is there? Even if he presented an abbreviated version and the final version is not the same, in our debate, we will talk about it. But even this one, we won't have opportunity to debate it. So, Nana Akufo-Addo was in Parliament, three-term member of Parliament. He knows that. He knows that the Hansard will capture the State of the Nation as presented by him. And future generations will read about the tenure of Nana Akufo-Addo in very glowing terms. That's what he has done. But it is the responsibility of we those who are still alive to show that, oh, not all that glitters is gold.
I see.
I talk about Nana Akufo-Addo and financial. He says the country is not broke. My brother. In 2022, a group of 90 members of Parliament decided that they wanted the finance minister out. Why did they so decide? They said that the country was very difficult. There were challenges. And because of those challenges, they believed that the policies that were being implemented by the government through the finance minister were wrong. And that they were going to lose their seats if the finance minister was not changed. I don't know, I told you here when we were sitting at the other side, that had it been in Great Britain, the government would have collapsed.
That's true.
But Nana Akufo-Addo called them their bluff. They got the governor of the Bank of Ghana. How can you say the economy is not broke? You get the governor of the Bank of Ghana to violate the laws of the country. Print so much money that he sends more than 1 million people into poverty. And you say the country, I mean, you can't say this. Galamsey. He says that they initiated bold measures to fight Galamsey, and our water bodies are now clean. Macbeth said that life is like a story told by an idiot full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Look, you came into office. Yes, there was Galamsey. But what was the BTU? What was the turbidity levels of the waters? What was it? It was between 100 and 150. Even that we were crying.
Yeah.
We were crying. Today you are leaving office. Turbidity level of water in Ghana is more than 1,000. And you say the water is better now than it was before. It cannot be. It cannot be. Nana Akufo-Addo, with the greatest respect. It cannot be. Free education, yes. So we have had our challenges with free education. When the policy was introduced, I was among the first to call for a blueprint. One reason why policies do not receive good assessment and evaluation is that they don't come with blueprints. So what are you going to do? What are the benchmarks? How can you ensure that there's quality of education? How can you ensure that there is enough financial muscle? You have Ghana government has enough financial muscle to fund the policy. In fact, in any policy at all, there must be a funding mechanism. So you see that when you go to advanced country and they say they are going to recruit this number of policemen to beef up security, they tell you where the money is going to come from. And so I was the first to ask for a blueprint, a strategic document, which one will show us where money will come from to fund free senior high school. Two, what are the indicators, what are the benchmarks? A country's wealth is its people. You're going to invest in their education. You can't leave. And you remember when we were in Parliament, when we were debating whether senior secondary school should be 3 years or 4 years, I made a point that we should not leave education to politicians. We should put education in the hands of technocrats. Because whether it's 3 years or 2 years, I know of students who have completed universities in 9 years, 12 years. So it is not the duration, it is the investment. So then let's take it away from politicians and stop debating 3 years or 4 years. Let's see what investment we are going to put in education to ensure that when we train a Ghanaian doctor, indeed he can compete with any doctor trained anywhere.
Great.
So, no, I've not finished.
No, you are here. So
you are preliminary.
Yes, you are here. So you say more. So I mean, Honorable Seti Champo, I mean, the point really is that, I mean, from what everybody else has said, the president did not reflect the true state of the nation. And like your friend, your good friend is saying, he just did so the Hansard will capture it as he delivered for posterity or for whatever. But the real state of the nation, he didn't say anything about it. So he talked about corruption. People have issues with the things he said about corruption, that state institutions investigated and then dismissed those claims. You know, even the free SHS that he touted, there are so many problems with it. But he never at any point admitted that there were issues or there were problems with any of the things he was doing. And that for many is an issue.
Solomon, I'm surprised you said he never admitted.
I mean,
in the statement, the man talks about
the scale,
difficulties the country went through. That is an acknowledgement that we've been through challenges. I'm happy that Joe Jackson is saying he's happy to be a propagandist. I only want to remind my good friends that we're done with campaign. We are getting into proper business. And he knows. And my best consultant, because I always go to him for certain legal interpretations when I'm not really with myself on some concerns.
When we're in Parliament.
When we're in Parliament. Oh, yes. I must advisedly use the concerns.
Yeah.
Now, where we are as lawyers, do you deal with facts? What the president said, are they facts? Are they real issues that happened in this country? First and foremost, the beauty of what we're in today, the dispensation, democracy, is that I would have the opportunity to express myself the way I need to.
Yeah.
Am I seeing things that are facts, or I'm just speaking from some hymn book? Once they are facts, let us carry them. Is it true that, I agree with Joe Jackson when he says that when our inflation was rising up to 50-something in 2022, and today he sees that it has come down to 2023. Is that a fact that there's some amount of decrease? Is the system working or not working? Are we pushing ourselves to make sure that we come out of the difficulties? If we throw our hands in despair, then you can tell us that we are failures. But if we attempted to ensure and we did what is right to give us where we are today, and I'm saying this to remind my brother, Honorable Inusa, 2009 we were in Parliament. We had transitioned from one administration of President Kufuor to President Mills. The same rhetoric Ghana was broke started. The person who eventually was nominated to be the finance minister is today the Honorable Dr. Akufo-Addo. In his maiden statement to Parliament, we had this rhetoric before he was brought to be the finance. He said, the first time I heard the language, Sika Mpedidi, Ghana is not broke, was when the finance minister was appearing before the People's Forum Parliament to report on the state of the economy. And he was in the saddle. He changed the narrative from Ghana is broke to Sika Mpedidi, and that Ghana was not broke. But we had heard, that's why I'm reminding my friends that we have left the campaign phase. We are in the business today. And where we have the opportunity to do what we are doing, politics, apart from you giving us this space, is in Parliament. And I plead with them that Ghanaians give them this resounding opportunity to come and do things right. The talk must cease and we must see action. I'm happy Joe Jackson at least is saying that under the administration of President Akufo-Addo, we brought up a policy which is helping us to make some gains. That tells you that the character you are looking to run down is not a failure. At least under his watch, he was able to bring up something useful that you are encouraging the next administration to also follow and ensure that it gets better for them. Words are always cheap. So when you want to describe things, you can do it the way you prefer. But I want to encourage Ghanaians that this country, nobody can tell me it's broke. Are we not keeping the lights on?
Yes, but we can't pay our debts.
No, wait a minute. 3rd of this month, we are paying our coupons. That is part of our debt payment. That is an admission in the statement, which is going into the hands in Parliament. And the President stated it. I'll quote it for you. He says, I'm happy to inform the House that today, 3rd January 2025, my government will honor coupon payments to our Eurobond holders, amounting to $346 million US. We cannot afford to default on our debt repayments. This is an economy repaying her debt.
Yeah, but for a very long time.
Salam. That is where he admitted that we've been through difficulties. We didn't just go to do DDEP because we have issues. That is why we went to do DDEP. Acknowledging the fact and the truth that yes, there are challenges, there are difficulties, is honesty. And I give it to the President for doing that. And so he didn't shy away. That's why I'm saying we are away from the campaign. Well, let us look at the real fact. And I think the President did very well by stating the facts and putting it before all of us that this is the face of the state I came and you offered me the opportunity to lead. And he was so magnanimous to me and at the same time humble by saying that the greatest honor in his life was to have been given the opportunity to serve this country. And I think we need to give it to him. We may disagree. You see, the beauty of democracy is that we may disagree on anything your person does, but you cannot run away from the facts. And that is something all of us must acknowledge and work with moving forward in deepening this democracy we are in. When we're in the phase of marketing ourselves, you say anything to market yourself to the people. But when you have completed the market and there's real work, we'll get into business. And I believe we are going to get into business. It's early day for me to begin to look at how my friends will lead us. But I know and I'm praying well that Ghana will be the winner. And that's what we wish. That's exactly what the President said. You talked about the free senior high education policy.
And
you admitted that is something you cannot take away from him.
That's true.
There's no change of effect. We will not have ups and downs.
Great. So we'll deal with the free SHS, we'll deal with corruption, and then we'll deal with one or two issues and wrap up on this. But Joe Jackson wants to leave, and I want him to speak to us on the free SHS and what the impact of the program has been on the economy, because we hear that a lot of money has been sunk into that program, which is great. The president says that the future will justify the expenditure, sunk into, or the expenditure made on that. Joe, welcome again, and thanks for staying. The free SHS has been one of it's actually the flagship program of this government. A number of millions of children benefiting from this from 2017. The president puts the figure at 5.7, but the fact check has put the figure at 3.135 million. I mean, judging from data from the finance ministry, budget, the president's own State of the Nation address, and a few other sources. So 3.135 million against the president's 5.7 million. But millions of children have benefited from this program. People have said that this has come at a great cost to the economy. NDC says that it's a great program. They will not scrap it, but they will review it. They will improve it. They stop using the term review, so they will improve it and make it better. How much of an impact has the free SHS had on the economy of the country?
Okay, now listen, let's all be clear. Even when you talk about 3 million and not 5 million, that is still a significant number of the youth of this country who've been through free SHS. And what is clear is that the masses of Ghanaians like free SHS. The impact was not necessarily that we did free SHS. It was that we wanted to have our cake and eat it. That so long as we're going to do free SHS, some other things had to give. Now, the biggest challenge I have with this government was that when they had the opportunity, they were borrowing and borrowing without any look at how we would repay. And the end result was that we went bankrupt and couldn't repay. It's not free SHS per se that's the problem. And let's remember that as a country, we can choose to prioritize whatever program we wish to. The challenge we have is that we must keep an eye on the big picture. And when we say you are reckless, it is not because you did a program that everybody approved of. It is because you didn't balance the whole picture. So rather than say that free SHS was a cost, let's say that free SHS, given that it was such a unanimously loved program, they should have looked at other parts such that we didn't fall into what we fell into in 2022, lifting our hands and declaring bankruptcy.
I see. So if you were to speak to the incoming administration on free SHS, what would you say? People say that limited to just day schools or day students, boarding students, let them pay fees or let them pay for the feeding and a few other things. If you were to speak to them, the state of the economy we have now and the expenditure or the budget allocation to free SHS over the years, what would that advice be? Just continue the way it is, bring in private schools as the former President Mahama or President-elect Mahama has promised, or you want parts of the specs of the program, the perks of the program taken off, like boarding, etc., so that people who want to be in a boarding house will pay for their feeding, so that the burden is not solely on government, given the nature of the economy we have.
Listen, the objective of free SHS is to get our youth to learn, is to get our youth to come out as better students. Now, we should make sure that the elements of learning take precedence over other issues like accommodation. Of what I beg to differ with the outgoing powers that be, that we can provide accommodation, yet we don't provide books. And that for a long time, the books were not available for the students. And that even going into school today, parents still have to buy books. I would rather parents got books free. I would rather parents got more contact, students got more contact time. And accommodation was put back in the hands of parents that can afford it. Think about it. Even if we decentralize the issue of accommodation, such that free accommodation was available to the poorest districts or the poorest communities, and not just across board. Even and prioritized the learning, the actual learning of the students, the books, the contact time, and other issues. We will be able to review pre-SHS and drive harder to the objective. I'm not sure accommodation is a critical part of the objective. What we wanted is to get our students, every Ghanaian, an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to improve themselves, and an opportunity to contribute to the productivity of this country.
I see. Even though people will argue that, for example, if I'm poor, I want to go to free SHS, I want to go to SHS, I want to go to Wesley Girls, I want to go to Adisco, I'm in Accra, I cannot go without my accommodation being paid for. And because I'm unable to pay, and so the state will not pay for me, it means that I cannot go to that school. That will be an argument people may put up. What do you say to that?
But should we still be keeping these schools as the best schools? Or we should spend the money improving other schools that are available in other communities? We know these schools have done well in the past. What stops us from getting other schools to do as well as these schools are doing? Listen, we should. There's a standard blueprint for getting other schools better, right? It is improving the conditions of teachers. It is making books available and facilities available. It is improving the whole educational infrastructure. We still have schools under trees. The money should be spent bringing up the other schools, not keeping to these old schools that have been there for hundreds of years. I went to Infantstream. I'm proud of my school. But would it make sense for me to keep only Infantstream and have people fighting to go only for that few places that are in Infantstream? Or for us to have a program that will make sure every district has a school that can match the results of all the other good, so-called good schools? That's what you should be driving at.
I see.
So I'm saying that the emphasis now should not be on having a few good schools where we are all struggling to provide accommodation. It's to bring up the schools. The emphasis now is how do we improve the facilities? How do we make sure that learning can take place in Gambaga, learning can take place in Asokore, learning can take place in Accra, learning can take place anywhere in this country at a very high level.
Very well. Thank you so much, Joe Jackson, Director of Operations, Daily Finance.
And I end on this note. That we are in a difficult situation. The reality we see is that the country is broke. And that as Ghanaians, we should have hope. We should have faith that things will get better. But we should also be real that things are tough.
Very well. Thanks so much, Joe, for speaking to us. Thanks for your time. We'll take a short break. When we return, I'll let Honorable Seti Champong conclude this point on free SHS. Honorable Nisa Fuseni will deal with that. Then we'll move to the subject of corruption, and then Galamsey briefly. Then we can look at the 8th Parliament and the 9th Parliament. This is a big issue. Don't go away. You're welcome back. This is the big issue on 97.3 City FM on ChannelOne television and also on all our socials. The show is live and interactive. Your views are welcome on our WhatsApp number displayed on your screen, 02044470033 or 05499869996, and we'll be happy to read it out to the rest of the world. Yes, before the break, we were talking about the free SHS and how transformative that program has been. In fact, the president says it's one of the things that there'll be no debate about the use of the word transformational to describe it. Millions of school children have benefited from this program. Indeed, It's one of the policies that has affected every household. Every household has somebody or knows somebody that has benefited from this program. But as always, there's always been a problem with implementation. There's a debate about how it should be implemented. The president and his government have always thought that the way they are doing it is the best way to do it. The opposition thinks that there are things you shouldn't put in there because it will constitute a drain on the economy. Now we are here, difficult economy. President says Ghana is not broke. Joe Jackson thinks that's not the case. Idris Afuseni thinks that the country cannot pay its debt, and that should be tantamount to being broke. But we are still at it. We are still in it. The country is not dead, so we hope things get better.
But I said that we have started paying our debt. We started paying yesterday.
We have to check that.
Yes, check. We started paying.
The president could say
go
things.
Through the books.
The president could say things.
Don't say the president could say things. It was before Parliament.
It's
going into the record.
Yes.
And so the record must make sure.
So we have to check that.
So don't worry. So let me move on. We've not only just done free senior high school, technical and vocational education. Huge transformation in there, and not just impacting on the people infrastructure-wise. We've brought in STEM, and we've established a whole service, creating employment, TVET service, which is also an addition to the Ghana Education Service. And so when I listen to people talk about economy, I will sometimes sit back and ask myself, so all these things that are being done and being implemented in this economy, is it not the economy being expanded? Is it not the reality? At the end of the day, Inusa will tell you, the finance minister's biggest headache in Ghana, where we live, is the wage bill at the end of the month. And so you realize that the controller is swerving contractors, is not going to pay contractors because they must ensure that emoluments are satisfied. Now, I give you this. This economy we've been running, I'm happy that Joe Jackson said what he said. We've never been able to balance our budget from the time we took independence. No government. So when he talks about this government not being able to balance, that is one thing that I expect all of us who have gone to school and are able to understand the issues must contribute for all of us to change the paradigm. That is the essence of us being educated and helping to contribute. No, excuse me.
He called it the God's economy.
Yes, of course. But
8 years down the line, we are still saying the same thing.
Selom, as a good student of what we know to be a public system that we run, 8 years in the era we are in, you'll not be able to change thing. You will be able to introduce systems that, if when practiced properly, will help us. We had never done a gold for oil before, but now we're looking at it. Today we've taken over from South Africa in gold production. We are still struggling from Galamsey. That is an admission that indeed we have issues. When the president talked about it, he was not lying. He was talking about when he underestimated the enormity of fighting Galamsey, when he said, I'm putting my presidency online. And it came to haunt him. He knew it will haunt him. But one thing I give to the president, he took a bold decision. He stood by it, even though it affected him. 8 years ago, my political party had won a landslide like my colleagues have done today, 169 in Parliament. The president took office and with that might said, I'm putting my job on the line. By the 10, we were 137 with an independent. And that is the effect of fighting Galamsey. So,
but many people say, and the data actually shows that assertion is not true. That he won in almost all the Galamsey areas. The places he didn't win were not traditional MPP seats.
Complementary to the presidency is the legislature. We were initiating major policies with the 169 parliamentarians. We are dropped to 137. What was the contributory factor?
Yeah, but I'm saying
all our seats.
You cannot say Galamsey.
No, I'm saying all our seats in the mining areas. Galamsey, unfortunately, we political actors have made it a political conversation today. I was born, I'm over 50 years. I was born to come to hear of Galamsey. It is not new to Ghana. The practice is when we had allowed certain foreigners to invade our territory, and they taught us the usage of certain tools and equipment that heightened it, and that is where we started struggling, and we've never returned. And these are matters that, as a people, we should all admit that we have failed as a people and stop pointing fingers at each other. That is not the way leadership must be made. Leadership must be where you admit your failures. When you know you had it wrong and you got it wrong. My brother Yunusa will tell you, by 2010, certain media houses were talking about failure of fighting Galamsey in this country. 2012, 2013, we're still repeating the same narrative. It's a matter which that is how come the president took office. He said he was going to stop it. And it is not an easy fight. I've been in it. And I will not sit here and run my mouth and tell everybody that is an easy battle. No. Where you have your population compromised, it is very difficult leading a people who knows what they want and you wanting to change them into a different direction. And so when political actors take a...
difficult in what sense? They'll fight you physically or because they will not vote for you?
I would plead with you to go take some of the reviews from some of your sister stations who go investigating on the ground. The grounds you go to, the people you go to protect, the water bodies around, they are the ones who will give you up that you have come here to stop the people giving them money. And this is the reality of life. You can't run away from the fact.
So the consequence is that you may lose political power.
Exactly.
That's the difficulty with it.
That is it. If you want to fight it in totality, so run up to the elections when everybody was on the neck of the administration, that get the waters done, get the waters done. I asked myself, what were we trying to do? We're just, forgive my language, we're just trying to be actors in a way and not real, because the business of assuring yourself that this is what I want to do, you take that decision. But the people who will assist you to get that decision well done are refusing to come along with you. What do you do? Are you going to kill all of them? Will you shoot and kill everybody? Is that what you promised? You swore oath to come and do?
But you swore oath to protect the natural resources, the river bodies and everything. So if people are destroying them, you discipline them, you sanction them.
Fortunately for us, we started our sanctioning and were brutal by burning people's equipment. The same mouthpieces came after us, that we are taking livelihoods from people. It is not an easy matter. I pray for my colleagues who are coming into office. They know of it. I pray for them how they go to do it. I won't stand and sit here and play politics with it, because I've been faced with it and I know the reality. And there's no point playing politics with it.
Very well.
I watch the space.
Great. Free SHS. I mean, the matter was going into Galamsey, which we'll come to. But yes, great program. Joe Jackson has said his views on it. Seth has spoken on it. What will the NDC's plan be now? Says you will not.
So first of all, let's all understand that no one can be against free education in principle. I am a beneficiary of free education, except that it was limited to the Northern Territories. And the policy, what was the policy that informed that? The colonial policy was that they had consigned the people of the North to hewers of wood and drawers of water. And so he wanted to bring, to bridge the geographical gap between the North and the South. You needed to introduce a policy that would bring the people up. And so that's how I benefited. So no one in principle, I mean, if the policy is that you want to educate Ghanaians and you want a majority of Ghanaians to be educated, but you must do it well. When Nkrumah did it, it raised a lot of people. We even produced our first president and then our second president. Now, in the last election, we had two Nordness
in the front row.
It's the benefit of that policy. That's that policy.
But time tells.
No. Because Nkrumah did it well.
Over time.
So, Jackson said, it must not matter which school you attended. And I'm happy when he was mentioning, he started from Gambaga. I attended Naleligu Secondary School. Do you know of the school? Have you heard that name before?
I've heard of Naleligu, obviously.
Yes, Naleligu, but not Naleligu Secondary School.
It's in the Northeast.
I attended there, but there were teachers, there were facilities. Okay? And they put the fire in me to learn. And that it was possible for me to emerge. That's what we're saying. So, Naleligu Secondary, there was Tamale Secondary School, there was Ghana Secondary School. But I attended Naleligu Secondary School when I passed the common entrance. That is what we are saying. It's not Sologaniering. No. And when we say this government has been very reckless, and he's used that word, and you know the meaning of recklessness. doing things without regard to the consequences. And then Akufo-Addo put that as the central pillar, as the central axis of his policy, recklessness. When he told us that the free HSS is about choice. It's about choice. And he, the president, has decided that he would do that. And say, yes, fine, it's choice. It's a choice of the president to do that. But you know, choices have consequences. What we just asked of the president to do was, look, yes, you are doing this thing. Tell us how you are going to do it. And that too was a border. He said we're naysayers. He called us Sanballat and Tobias. Yes. That's what he called us. He said that we don't believe in policy. I mean, we are skeptics. That's what the president told us. Now, we have got a Ghana Living Standard Survey. That ought to have been the beginning of free HSS. Do you know that me and you, we are being subsidized by the poor people of this country for free HSS? Do you know that?
Because you could pay.
Yeah. And then your child is enjoying in the public school free when you can pay. What policy is that? What policy is that?
But is it not the same with a lot of our social intervention policies?
No.
NHIS is the same thing.
No. You know, NHIS is what if you want, you enroll. If you don't enroll and contribute, you don't take it.
But
it's just like SNIT. Just like SNIT, it's a social policy. You must enroll before you benefit.
But if you are enrolling, there's no distinction between the poor and the rich.
So if you assess yourself and you say, I want to enroll, and you enroll, you have an obligation to contribute. It's like NHIS is built on what we call the risk, pooling risk together. It's insurance.
It is, but of course.
So what are you talking about?
The law actually makes.
So what I'm saying is that when you introduce a social, and you go read about social policies, this policy particularly, and he said he was a liberal Democrat. This policy, when you read its origin, it's a social policy. It's a policy of built from socialism, treating everybody equally, and distorting the underlying economic structure. That's what happened. So you go to Infansepim, you go to Achimota, and you and I, or the people who lower than us, if their children are lucky, because their children cannot even perform well in the BEC. So what happens? They go there and they're reading what? Home economics. Okay? Why don't you create opportunity for the many schools to be equally circumstanced, so that these children can read courses that clearly can help them realize their dreams.
But that will be long term. Raising the standards of schools before you give people the access. I didn't say raise the standards.
You said I said put in the infrastructure.
Yeah, but
in the Lagos secondary school when I attended, there were only 6 buildings. The time I was there,
putting up the infrastructure.
There were only 6 buildings, and the school originated from a middle boarding. It was not built from scratch. And Northern School of Business, I was there when it was formed. I was in private school when it started as Ghana Commercial School, and turned into Northern School. Ghana Business Secondary School. It was run from somebody's house. It's the idea, it's the vision. Nana Akufo-Addo and his government lacked the vision to see that, look, this is how we started. Let's dream. We are going to dream big, but we start small. Let's dream big, but we start small, because every incremental step adds to your success. They wanted big, dream big, and implement big, and come to a fiasco, disaster. Today, have you read the reports of the universities? I don't know. You don't hear the lecturers complaining
that the students are having.
There are standards. You don't hear that.
No, I mean,
that is not the concern of Nana Akufo-Addo.
No, wait, you see, to be fair, you know what we listen to.
Where's fairness here? When the standards of education is
what I'm saying, the standards of education is always falling. What I'm saying is, you guys did the A-level system. We did the SSS system. Even in those times, we had people say that the SS system was a downgrade of what people had, And so it's been a discussion every time. Every time, elderly people tell us that our system is worse.
So in the university, when they realized that the SS graduates had challenges, what did they do?
They made it 4 years.
Thank God. So they addressed the fallen standards
with an additional year.
Yeah. So we see, I don't know, we are talking about things that we already know. These people didn't want to listen. That's why we are where we are. Ghana Living Standard Survey, every year we do it. And that's the basis upon which LIP is given to people. So you already know the people who cannot pay school fees. You know them, don't you? If not, you may give them LIP. Target them and bring them. I mean, it stems from the policy that you don't leave anybody behind. But you get people to subsidizing the living standards of people. So this man said it. If for nothing at all, I think I need to give him credit. Ofori, what was his name? Ofori-Atta, the finance minister.
Ken
yes, he said it. Well, in your studio, you remember?
You said it on Point of View.
Point of View, your studio. You know, I mean, and that's why the policy failed. It's failing. It's failing because...
But you see, now people have tasted of the very free nature of it. How will you balance that with the reforms you want to bring?
You don't know why universities were going on strike. When you start with free, who doesn't want free things? And you want to change it and say, look, you have an obligation to contribute towards your future. They will strike against you. So now, NDC, first of all, we are going to call a stakeholders conference. Within the first 100 days, there will be a general stakeholders conference to look at how we reposition Ghana's educational system. Okay, and decisions emanating from that stakeholders conference will guide the way we'll implement free senior high school. But even if for nothing at all, we need to find money to implement free senior high school. We need to find the money. And you see, because it's a social insurance policy, if I'm benefiting, or if I stand to benefit, or if it is a matter of law that I contribute towards other people in society, we must impose a tax on all the people of this country that we want to fund free senior high school, and everybody has a duty to pay towards this fund.
The president told us those times that the revenue from the oil find will be used to fund free SSS.
That was when he said, you forgot, that's why he said he had choices. There are choices, and he has chosen to use revenue from oil fund to do that. That's why he said that.
So there was a source of revenue.
Serious. You are looking at a finite resource. Again, you see the bankruptcy of the policy. You are looking at a finite resource. One day, the resource will finish. But the people of Ghana are not going to finish. And you have introduced a policy that is in perpetuity. And you are building the funding regime of that policy on the resource that will finish. You see the bankruptcy. When we said it, instead we're not talking to the issues. But so the second decision that NDC will be making is, look, free HSS, it doesn't extend to private schools also.
Yes.
No, we don't. So why? Are you targeting schools or you are targeting students, Ghanaian students? What is the target? Is it the schools?
Maybe to be cheaper for the public schools because government already pays salaries.
So government pays salaries, and whatever government is doing, and if we talk about salaries, then you can go back to Nkrumah's era and say even there was some modicum of freeness in the education that we were given. Because government used to give the books, the chalk, the salary of teachers, the infrastructure. We didn't provide the infrastructure. Now, so if you are targeting and you're not going to discriminate between children in Ghana, Ghanaian citizens, you must target the child. That's why NDC is saying, look, let's bring in the children in the private schools. Now, some people will say, like you have said, that it might be very expensive to do that. One, who says that education is cheap? If not, if we were cheap, we won't be owing caterers. We won't be owing caterers. We won't be, I mean, we would have not had problems with books and chalk. It's expensive. So, coming back to the expense, we must find a dedicated source. Just like we did for Get Fund. We must find a dedicated source. Two, if you say it's difficult, it's expensive in the private sector, government must subsidize. So if you decide that your award will go to a private school and and some private schools. We must categorize those private schools. There are some private schools that government will have to stay its hands off. You do the Rwandan thing. Stay your hands off. This kind of private schools, we are not there. But this kind of private schools that are built in the areas that are not properly serviced, government will subsidize the cost of training of a Ghanaian child. Again, the policy is directed towards Ghanaians, not any child, Ghanaian children. So government subsidizes that for the Ghanaian children, and the parent will also have to be part of it. After all, if it is in the private school, you are already paying for your child. But government says, look, because we are refocusing the policy towards the Ghanaian citizen, we will subsidize. So, and how will the subsidy work? Paying to the private school the same amount of money that government pays to the public schools. Okay, and if there's a shortfall, the parents make. So there are many other options. But for me, I come back to what Jackson said. It should not really matter, should it? Where you are trained. Now, the last thing I will talk about is what happens in advanced countries. Look, education is principally a local government activity. Local government. So, Minister, you were Eastern Region. Eastern Region has districts. Those districts have got schools. What are the districts doing to support the education of the citizens of the district? What are they doing? Then we left education to the central government, and the districts have absolutely nothing to do with the education. How can it work that way? You are in a district and you are paying taxes. If for nothing at all, you are paying lampool to the assembly. The assembly goes to the market and is taking market tolls. Is taking land, property rate, and all those things. But it has nothing to do with education of the citizens. It has nothing. You see why? That is why in this Galamsey we have failed. Because principally, Galamsey is an environmental problem. It's an environmental challenge. Then the district assemblies don't see themselves as directly responsible for creating an enabling environment in the areas that they operate. So you find them complicit.
I see. So, yeah, you have something to add to the free estate discussion.
Exactly, because you see, I don't share Innocent's concern on the university's report, because the results as of the statistics show clearly that there's been improvement.
Yes, but people talk about passing. You can just pass, but what's the real outcome? You just pass.
No, Solomon, I also had the same reservations when the whole educational reform took place at the time, changing from the old system to the current system. I'll give you one thing. I always say about this example. I was driving from work, and I was driving in front of the Legon University. And I know that during hall weeks, all activities stays on campus. Nothing crosses the main gate and comes outside. And people were going to pond. And I saw students running across the street to come to pond at the gas station opposite. And I said, oh no, this has never happened, because it's an in-house thing that more or less for me is an entertainment for in-house, because that's where we exercise most of these traits that we develop later in life. Now I come to this, that is just my low side on that conversation. The facts that I know is that there's been improvement in the performance of the children. One good thing that I'm happy about these whole reforms is the placement system. Like Joe Jackson said, he went to Infantsipim. I went to St. Peter's.
You see,
look at
very good schools.
Oh yes, but the good thing is that today, look at the performance of some of the non-so-called schools.
You used to call us Marshall schools.
I don't want to use those words. In the competitions which are held by some of these marketing companies, the science and maths quizzes. Look at how the schools are doing very well. Because students are placed at random, people are beginning to also assert themselves and learn well and get properly placed. So when they come for competition, they're able to do well. I'm a happy person today, because when we used to scramble for space without even a system which is helping us to place students, everybody was looking for a graded school for their award to go to. But today, if you go to push for that, you don't even get it.
Yeah, but they find ways of getting into those schools anyway.
Oh, but at least in a broader sense, such worries are reduced. And good students are emerging from schools that nobody thought about. And for me, those are the positives of the systems of reforms we have seen, which have been introduced. And I would always want to trumpet these things home. Let us not always look at the low side. Let's look at what positives have we gained. Like I talked about expansion. Look at the number of students who have gone into the system. And look at alternative education as well.
You know what's strange? The total disregard for calls for review of the program. No matter how good a program is, after a certain number of years, you need to review it. And it happens in our own lives. That's why people write resolutions and things like that. After a certain period, you want to sit, reflect on what you've done so far and see what you can make better. There were calls for a review. Let's look at let's look at it. But it was a no.
So let's look
even the term review.
Let me be a bit rude here. When President Rawlings late introduced the current senior high school system, when was it reviewed? When did we see a first review of it? That started under President Akufo, when he got the experts to write. So it takes a period before you can do these things. It's research. You can't just wake up because we've introduced free SHS. And mind you, before we brought free SHS, our competitors told us that we would not be able to implement, we would not be able to do it.
No, we didn't say that.
And so,
yes.
You won't say it. Look, I'll look into your face and tell you that a fine gentleman will not say that. But you're not the only person who belongs to that political tradition. And you're not the only person who speaks.
I'm talking about
as a party. Your party faithful. Should I put a clip for you? Should I put a clip for you? Wait. He says my big brother, the incoming president, former president, said we will not introduce on the whimsical rhetoric of a desperate politician. That is the highest one. I don't want you to heckle me by giving me explanation on that interpretation. Yes. The truth be said, now it's been practice coming close for 8 years. For 8 years. 7, 8 years. Yes, 7, 8 years. So if we're talking for a review, I don't think it's out of place. It is rightly in place. But you cannot surcharge the person who started it that you did not allow for review.
Because every call for reform or review was rebuffed, as if review was a bad thing.
Solomon, let me say something here. It's about the way you come across and the way you put matters across. In the first place, you just quoted the former president, incoming president, how he described the president when he said it, that this is my vision and this is what I want to bring and do for Ghana. He had no confidence that it will be able to be achieved. He's come in, he's been given opportunity, he's demonstrated it. Implementing it, I said it here, and I won't run away from it. Change, every change anywhere on earth comes with opposition. And once you implement it, I said here some time ago, I said every Pasco is cheap. Once it's been implemented and we are beginning to see fruits of it, definitely there'll be low sides.
Good. Great. So this is a big issue, 97.3 City FM on ChannelOne television as well. My guest, the Honorable Seti Champon, Eastern Regional Minister, Inusa Fuseni, former MP, Tamale Central. We earlier heard Rashid Popu, Member of Parliament for West Central, and also Joe Jackson, Director of Operations at the Delex Finance. We want to move it up a bit. So the President also spoke about corruption, talked about the fact that, every corruption allegation has been investigated and dismissed. And I quote, "We ensure that all allegations of corruption leveled against appointees were duly investigated by independent institutions of state, which generally dismiss them as unfounded." But it still appears that many have not forgiven him with the manner in which some of these matters were investigated and dismissed. Case in point is the Cecilia Dapa matter, how she got to resign from government, and the acceptance letter, how the president addressed the matter. People thought the president was not serious with it, dealt with it with kid's glove, saying that he was confident that in the end she was going to be vindicated and all of that. That did not paint a good picture. People quote the CPI, the Corruption Perception Index, 40. This regime has been at 43% for a very long time, when indeed that was the lowest for the previous regime. Previous regime was around 47 at some point. 43 was the lowest, but 43 is continuing to be the highest for this particular regime, because saying that the perception has not been improving and acts of corruption have not been properly dealt with. You are in government. When people say these things and you hear the response from the president, does it satisfy you? The results of the election, partly people have said is due to the fact that people thought there was a lot of corruption that was not properly investigated, etc. When you hear these things on the street and you hear the president say this, that he set up institutions which have investigated matters and dismissed them generally, how does it make you feel?
Honestly speaking, perception is something that is difficult
to change.
And so when people have formed that perception, until an alternative appears, it is difficult to change their mind. Now, for me, running a government and institution, all we must do is to build up necessarily instruments that will help us shape the institutions. And so what instruments are we to develop? Laws. Posterity would ensure that the laws which we have enacted comes to protect the institutions as we love it. Because any person will be put in place would have no right of their own to do things by themselves. They will have to conform to the conventions and practices. And whatever principle is attached to that particular practice, you can never deviate from it. You have to work with it. And so for me, when the president, in his rise up to become the president of the Republic, decided to do the office of the special prosecutor, which I know Honorable Yunus Afuseni contributed greatly in shaping that particular piece of legislation. For me, is another way of helping to improve on public services, in helping curb corruption. That is another way of demonstrating that you want to help fight it. Here that we didn't have any law governing procurement in this country. And one administration thought, that's why I believe in democracy. One administration thought it was proper to enact a law so it will help us govern, because the perception was that everybody in government is corrupt. Everybody in government is stealing. But once you have the build-up and the systems developed, and that can checkmate, and then you use state institutions to conduct these searches. It's not every person who is working in a government office that is corrupt, not even politicians. There are non-actors who are non-politicians who work to ensure that the state is well run and is well protected by all measures. That's why we try to introduce the Witness to Protection Act, which is something healthy that will enable the judiciary to also help us checkmate some of these matters when it comes before them. We did quite a number of laws to help protect the institutions. Because Salom, once you come into government, the only thing you can do is to do proper policies that will help the system become good. Other than that, the human beings are different. And you need the systems to checkmate the human beings. And so if you don't improve upon those systems, you are doing nothing.
So these laws were there or are there. But are you happy with how so-called allegations of corruption were dealt with? So we saw the issue of the Australian visa scandal. My good friend Pius and co were cleared, only for him to resurface later in his quest to go to Parliament, recounting those events that he was the one in charge. He got people to go to Australia. The next World Cup is in US. And if they vote for him, he, the guy who did that, will ensure that they go to US and all of that. Making nonsense of the so-called clearance or dismissal of the allegation of corruption. We saw the Cecilia Dapa matter. People are not even sure how that matter is now. There was now a tussle between Iyoko and the Office of the Special Prosecutor and all of that. So when the ordinary man sees this, the ordinary man thinks that the people at the top are just playing tricks with us. Because now this amount of money is in the person's house, person under the person's bed. The person is not being able to properly tell us where the money was from. At one point, it was from her cosmetic business. When that was not flying, it was proceeds from his brother's funeral. The story wasn't jelly. But once these things happen, these are signals or indications to make you want to drill down further. We didn't see that. The matter was referred to Yoko because OSP said he didn't have the mandate to do that. And the matter is almost dead at Yoko. Nothing has happened again. and the person is walking free. So when people see this, they can't help but to say that you are superintending over a corrupt government. And that is what we see. So are we happy with how these allegations have been treated? And at the back of all of that, the president wrote to the lady saying that he was confident that the lady would be vindicated, and said a lot of nice things in that letter when the whole country was stunned by the amount of money found in an individual's home. Where did the money come from? You know.
Salom, I'm sure you agree with me that before you came to sit here to anchor and work with us, this establishment had reviewed their relationship with you, and they were confident that you'd be able to deliver as a good host to us. So on the face of it, you go with your resume. In the delivery of your service, if you don't moderate us the way you should or you must, definitely observers would have their own commentary. Me, I always promote democracy because I witnessed the PNDC era, I witnessed the AFRC era, and these three systems, I believe in the 1992 process. And so I would always advocate for 1992 process. Now this process gives us the opportunity, and as a lawyer, you know, a person is not guilty until proven. And so when all these things are happening and the narratives are flying around, the best bodies to give us the true statements are the state institutions. For me, I know most of the matters you have raised, the state institutions are going through them and are reviewing them. If I don't think it is all dead, and the offices which are still going on with these matters must pursue them to give us a conclusion that will be able to build our country and make sure that tomorrow, if such matters come up, we'll have something to fall on as a referral. So my advice, and I know the president did what he had to do because he's had relationship with some of his appointees. He knew them on that relationship and had confidence with them at that level. If anything comes until proven otherwise, I don't think it will be right to fault him for what actions he took, because he worked with them based on some trust he held prior to appointing them into those offices. And so if they get into office and maybe they conduct themselves in a way that you cannot affirm by some findings, you will just be using perception and throwing some, forgive my language, some propaganda at people. And you know, it is very painful that a hard-won image will be tarnished without proper proven guilt. And it's painful. That's why I said you can't change perception of people's minds easily. So once it is formed, this is formed. And mind you, we are running a country.
Actions should lead to that.
I get your point. I just wanted to end on this matter. We are running a country where at the back of every person's mind, politicians are corrupt, irrespective. Today you find some people who say, NDC, MPP, they are the same, you are all corrupt. And that is also gaining ground and building. And it is giving definition to certain things that we are seeing. We saw signs of it in this 2024 election. I know it is going to heighten by the time we go for the next general elections. The creation of independent parties, third forces, and no, this is as a result of the rhetoric. And we are a human society. We learn based on what comes before us. So for some of us, we would forever and ever go follow what the rule of law says, because I believe in the practice we are in, and that is what I'll forever and ever defend.
Great. Honorable Inusa, fight against corruption. Indeed, the president did refer some of the cases to independent state institutions, CID, OSP, even the Yoko and a few others. They all went ahead to dismiss the claims, meaning that there was no real issue in there. Why do we still say that the president has not done well in fighting corruption? He set out the office of the special prosecutor. He said he's resourced them, which is a fact.
It's not a fact.
No, he's resourced them. Look at the big office they have.
No, it's a big office.
Even choosing Martinamedu, who is not from his political party, to lead the OSP.
I was in parliament with him. When we set up the special prosecutor's office, for a whole year, they didn't give a special prosecutor money.
Yes, but now that has changed.
What I'm saying that you say that is a source.
No, but that was long ago. That's
long ago,
5-6 years ago, I think.
But that has followed. You didn't hear the recent comment of the special prosecutor. You didn't hear that. Don't talk about special prosecutor. Look, when you said corruption, just here I started listening. Those I can remember. But viewers are watching us. I'm going to mention those I can remember, and they can add to what they think are forgotten. The PDS. The monies that the company collected on behalf of ECG. Tell them, have you heard that they have refunded that money?
No, if not.
Bust, multiliners, then the contaminated fuel.
The contaminated fuel, off-spec fuel.
The millionaire challenge account, and the changing of the bank guarantee into an insurance guarantee.
But that was part of PDS.
That's part of it. But that's a different. It is that change that brought about PDS. Yes. So there are two different separate things. Now, have the Auditor General's report on the utilization of the COVID funds has it been resolved? If you want, just the boy was saying that the Akufo-Addo's administration is a testimony on how not to govern a country. The COVID Auditor General's report is a testimony on how not to use public funds prudently. Have we had anything? The SML, the cash for seats, Cecilia Dapa, the public land sales. One thing you have not heard. Everywhere, I don't know of Eastern Regional. Everywhere, as if MPP knew they were going out of power. Anywhere, even if there was a football field which belonged to government, they go and petition and say,
"No, sir."
I mean, everywhere.
It is not true.
Everywhere. Look,
we are finished campaigning.
Okay,
we are keeping about the president. Anyway, let me keep quiet. I'm going to have my way. I'll have my way to speak very soon.
My friend. So I'm telling you, why there's that perception of corruption? Why? So, Tamale, when I was Land and Natural Resource Minister, there were bungalows, very old bungalows, dotting the former hospital, the regional hospital. People came to me and said, look, let's sell it. I said, no. Government acquires lands in anticipation of future development. If the hospital is finally rebuilt, where are we going to put the nurses? So leave it. Don't touch it. All those lands have gone to private people, including the market, Ababu market. Go to Ababu market. They entered the market and petitioned and sold to people. And the market is now private properties of people. And you say we shouldn't talk about it. Gate fees. Very early in the Akufo-Addo's administration. Very early. They told us 2 people, deputy chiefs of staff, 2. I won't mention their names. Were receiving gate fees. Nana Akufo-Addo said he was investigated and cleared. Not so. Have you seen the report?
No, we've not seen the report.
Have you seen the report? Why can an old man be deceiving young people who know more than him? Australian visa. He said the police cleared Pius Ahaji. Have you seen the police report?
No, we've not seen
Even Pius Ahaji, me, to the best of my recollection, Pius Ahaji was cleared by Nana Akufo-Addo on an MPP platform.
When he went to Volta region.
Volta region.
Yeah, but I'm sure he spoke after he had seen the report of the police.
The report was meant for Nana Akufo-Addo.
But he commissioned...
The police is a public institution.
The state commissioned the investigations.
The police... So he was doing it. You are a lawyer.
No, but...
When they say Republic against... Is it Nana Akufo-Addo?
No,
when he made a mistake of saying the president against Katuchi Kata, didn't they throw the case away? What are you talking about? Public Procurement Authority.
Yes.
The key to fighting corruption. Your key, that was when I knew that the fight had been lost. That is the key to fighting corruption. And then Akufo-Addo had told us in opposition that single source was the bane of corruption. Then you appoint somebody. The man was not even honest with us. The man had been implemented earlier on at the Ministry for Works and Housing in the purchase of alum. He brought him to be the head of PPA.
He was there before, so I think they just brought him back.
That's an appointment.
Yes.
If you are there and nobody knows you don't have power and you appoint him and give him power, what did he do? He set up a company and was selling government contracts. And you say it's not corruption.
But it's a matter.
I'm saying that no, these things. I'm just mentioning.
So
and viewers can add more. Professor Adai, is he in public service?
He used to.
He used to. Chairman, not so. What did he say? Was he working at the Ministry of Rules? He said he was sitting in his house when people came and told him that I'm for the Ministry of Rules, and I was there. I was there.
So you know what he was saying?
So I was shocked.
Oh, you were shocked that he was saying so? That people came to him wanting contracts and things to sell contracts.
I thought that the contract, you give it to people who can perform. Give it to people who can perform, not those who can pay. Professor
But when he was called to substantiate that, he couldn't. So what was the point? He couldn't substantiate the point he made. So
when the corruption perception index said that the corruption perception index of 43% is Nana Akufo-Addo's best, have you ever called them to substantiate that one? Have you ever called them? It's a perception. Election. You didn't see this. The corruption came to a head in this election. If anybody did not see corruption walking about in our constituencies, then you were not in Ghana. The rice, the money, the clothing. The corruption came to a head. That's why the people voted away this government. So if there was perception, I was on the field. The money. And somebody called me from Williamson and told me that, sir, is there no way we can prevent these people from sharing the rice? I said, but we are doing politics and they're sharing their rice. But this is Ghana rice. And you say corruption fights. Corruption fights. How did they classify the forest reserves? Who was it to benefit?
The Achimota forest?
No, Achimota forest is not Galamsey. I'm saying about the Galamsey and the passage of the LI.
Yes.
Who was it intended to benefit? Nana Akufo-Addo must tell us. Because for a long time we had said that no mining in forest reserves. And there was a law on that. If Nana Akufo-Addo and his government took a decision to disclassify those areas and allow mining to take place, Nana Akufo-Addo, you say you fought corruption. Who was that LI intended to benefit?
The state.
Which state?
The state will get a process.
Some companies.
The state will get a
Some
process.
companies. What process? The state is getting a process. Wouldn't have gone to the IMF. The excavators.
They were fighting.
I'm a lawyer. He's a lawyer.
I'll be one soon.
Oh, you want soon? But you were in Parliament.
Very well.
When we said that, look, let's develop a comprehensive legal regime to deal with equipment in the mining sector. You recall?
I do.
And amended the law. And we said that when those equipment are seized, they must be sent to the district coordinating council or the regional coordinating council, your office. And then your first primary duty is to use those equipment to do what? To reclaim. It's the law. I'm not, you are there. Is that what we did? Is that what we did? That's also corruption. And when you violate the law for a particular purpose, it's corruption. It's corruption. You're a lawyer, it's corruption. Worst of all, up to now, those equipment that were seized, I'm talking about equipment. I'm not talking about cash. I'm not talking about gold. You saw Franklin Barton's report. So where did they go? And you say we are not corrupt. You say your government was the best government. 43, how come 43 be best? Then John Dramani Mahama, he was excellent. And the last one on corruption. You want me to add?
Which is what?
I won't add now.
In fact, I'm very happy for what Inusa is doing.
Which is what? Which is
I know.
You see it. I'll add the last one.
Oh,
You see?
I thank God I'll be here.
You're here.
I'm not going
And
anywhere.
he also listed.
Oh, I thank God I'll be here. I thank God I'll be here.
They say that remembering the dead is a warning to the living. Now, and we are also told that when you walk along a footpath and see droppings, that tells you the food or the fruit that is in season. When we walked along the path left by Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, all we could see along the path were droppings of corruption.
I see. Great. All right.
So when we say that no sister A associate, and you know the meaning, things take their color from their surroundings.
Yeah.
And because we were seeing that around Nana Akufo-Addo, that led us to the conclusion that Nana Akufo-Addo's government was corrupt.
Great. All right. Dr. Sekwapon is joining us on the line. Dr. Sekwapon is Eric Sekwapon is a CDD fellow, is a political analyst. He's joined us on the line for quick thoughts on this, on governance issues, corruption. Doc, good morning. Welcome to the program. We've been dealing with the State of the Nation address. We are in the last a few minutes of it. But give me your take on the president's view that he's dealt with corruption quite decisively and that he's referred all allegations of corruption to state institutions or independent institutions, and they've been generally dismissed as unfounded. My guest, Inusa Fuseni, thinks otherwise. Of course, Senator Champon, who is a member of the government, also thinks otherwise. He supports the president's view. What do you think, especially civil society? Your boss, Professor Jimabuedi, told us here before that when it comes to the fight against corruption, Nana Akufo-Addo is not done well. He said the record has been in tatters for a while, speaking to us about 2-3 years ago. Recently, Professor Nsiasare, also speaking to us, said when it comes to the fight against corruption, Nana Akufo-Addo's government has been the worst in the Fourth Republic. What do you think of the president's own verdict on his claim that he has decisively dealt with corruption?
All right. Good morning to you. Good morning to the co-panelists in the studio. Special greetings to, we called him Senior Setu back in St. Peter's. So let me greet my senior as well from PESCO.
The grade A schools.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. And so, when I listened to the president yesterday as he spoke about his record of corruption, there's a disconnect between all the measures that he outlined, the institutional measures such as the setting up of the Office of the Special Prosecutor, and also some of the investigations, the providing of financial resources to key investigative bodies, and public perceptions and rating of the fight against corruption. And that, for me, is a question that, with all due respect, the president, his government, would have to ask themselves why that disconnect, right? So if you look at Afrobarometer and on the question of perception of the level of corruption, you see quite the percentage of Ghanaians who say the level of corruption has increased somewhat a lot go up since Afrobarometer round 9 in 2019. It went up a lot in 2022 and stayed around almost about 70-something% in 2024. If you also look at the rating of how well the fight against corruption is going, you see a downward trend between when the president took office in 2017, when he scored well, to this year, 2024, Afrobarometer, when no more than 14% of Ghanaians rated the fight against corruption well. In my opinion, this is where the president has been hurt a lot in the fight against corruption, even as he outlined some of the efforts that his government made. The president often talked about due process, And one of the things he would always say is that not until you find yourself on the wrong side of the law, you would never appreciate due process. So presumption of innocence, the right to free trial, and all of those things. And I agree with the president on that. Due process is important when something as serious as corruption allegations is leveled against a public official, which has consequences that can go as far as the denial of your liberty in terms of being incarcerated. But the fight against corruption is not only a legal fight, it is also a political fight, because it is also in the court of public opinion that you also lose or win Ghanaians in how well you're fighting corruption. How many Ghanaians end up following the legal processes or go to courts to track corruption cases? Very few. Versus publicly, let's say if a minister resigns, if you admonish a political appointee, if you ask a political appointee to step aside so investigations are completed, if you withhold judgment on the innocence or otherwise of an appointee of your government accused of corruption until all processes are completed. All of those narratives, all of those public posturing or how you engage the public around these issues become critically important in gaining some political goodwill, even as you let institutions deal with accusations of corruption through the courts and in a legal manner. And for me, I believe that is where, whenever the president touts his record or the efforts of his government to fight corruption by outlining some of the institutional measures, it falls short of public acceptance, because the political side of the fight was not viewed positively as it is reflected, not even just in Afrobarometer, but if you look at other good governance indices as well. If you look at the Mo Ibrahim Index of African Governance, for example, you see some deterioration in public, in the assessment of corruption, in public perceptions of corruption as well. Now, for me, that is where the president quote unquote lost the fight, not necessarily on institutional measures, but more importantly in how he engaged the public in demonstrating that political will to fight corruption.
I see. A final one on this. How do you think that posterity will judge him? What will posterity say about him and his fight against corruption?
In my opinion, I mean, I'm not sure if posterity would judge him favorably on that issue. Again, because of all of the reasons that I have alluded to. He would get credit, for example, for setting up something like the Office of the Special Prosecutor. But again, you would also notice that some of his own partisans did not help in how over time we came to embrace the Office of the Special Prosecutor, because in decisions that they didn't find favorable for political reasons, some of the things that were said about the office and the current office, and the current special prosecutor sort of defeated the whole idea of championing the fact that this was an institution set up by your own government. I mean, when the Airbus ruling came out, some of the rhetoric from some of my very good friends in the MPP made me start saying, I find it surprising and as well as disappointing to think of the fact that it was touted as one of your key tools and achievements in fighting corruption, but over time is also becoming one of the institutions that some of these voices in support of the MPP ended up discrediting or not finding the office useful. So that's where, for me, I'm not sure at this point the posterity's judgment will be very favorable. I mean, unless of course you are counting on someday things being even worse, that posterity would give this. But I don't think we also want to hope for a worsening perception of institutional corruption, so that posterity would have a favorable judgment on what happened over the last 8 years.
I get the point. Great. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll use the rest of the time to deal with Parliament, the 8th Parliament, 137-1. How did it perform? Hung Parliament. People had a lot of expectation that the hung nature of that Parliament, or the so-called hung nature of that Parliament, would help cut government excesses. Dr. Sekwapo.
Yes.
Oh, Dr. Sekwapo, I didn't know today was a birthday.
I say Happy New Year.
Oh, Happy New Year. Sorry. Happy New Year. I mean, Seth,
Happy New Year
your
to
senior
you too.
says Happy New Year to you. Great. So we'll take a short break. We'll return and look at Parliament briefly before we say goodbye today. Don't go away. This is the big issue. This is a big issue, the final lap of the program. We're looking at the Parliament, the 8th Parliament, the Parliament that will be dissolved soon on Monday. What has been the successes of this Parliament, the failures? People think that the Parliament could have done better. Many people expected so much of it because of the numbers, and people thought that the Parliament would check government excesses. Maybe they did, maybe they did not. What do you think? How about the leadership of Parliament, the speakership? Did they do anything to help how the House was regulated, more or less? What are expectations of the next Parliament that has an overwhelming majority for the NDC? How must they act to ensure that Ghanaians get the best out of them? So interestingly, my two guests in the studio were not in the 9th Parliament, were not in the 8th Parliament. So they sat outside to watch what was happening in Parliament. They were in previous Parliaments, and so they have quite some institutional information and experience. And of course, Dr. Sekwapo is also on the CSO side, watching things. Let me start off with you, Honorable Inus Afuseni. What will be your verdict on this 8th Parliament? Will you say that the nature of this Parliament helped it do its work, or didn't help it do its work properly?
Well, this Parliament, the 8th Parliament, has been a mixture of and wow. But there were some great opportunities that they missed. Great opportunities. There were things that they could have done better. And there were things that they did exceptionally well.
Can you give us examples of those things they could, great opportunities they had, things they could have done better, things they did worse?
Starting from the first, Parliament asserted its right to choose a speaker.
So the secret ballot and all of those,
great. So they chose a speaker who was not foisted on them. And the speaker could only be chosen, Speaker Blackburn could only be chosen because some members of the ruling government's party in Parliament decided to abstain from the votes. And in elections, if you abstain, you are indirectly voting for the other side. So that's how it came. So, and that decision to abstain was a deliberate decision. Okay, so it allowed Parliament to assert its authority in choosing a speaker. And for the first time in the history of this country, and it's a positive, that you had a president from a party and a speaker from another party. Look at what happened just yesterday in America. They had to use some arm-twisting tactics to be able to get a speaker aligned to the policies and ideology of Trump to emerge. It never happened again. So it's a positive. I mean, it's a positive. Again, because of the nature of Parliament, 137 with the independent member of Parliament holding the balance of power, the opposition was able to hold government's feet to the fire. So the opposition did a lot of work. Probably that's why NDC performed so disastrously in the parliamentary elections in the last election. Because people just felt that their party did not do well. and that it was important that they removed the assistant members of parliament because they didn't do well. So that might account for that. But then they also lost an opportunity to do better. For instance, when you have, and that could be as a result of an intransigent executive, but there was a tremendous opportunity for Parliament to deepen our democracy through consensus building and negotiation. But we lost on that. And that's why we found ourselves so many times in court. Okay, so I will not fault them too much, because sometimes it is the executive, because when you win power, Parliament is not a policy formulation body. It's a law-making body. And so when you have a policy and you are bringing that policy to Parliament, you have to engage the other side to understand your policy and to help you shape the policy so that you can build consensus around what you want to implement for the benefit of all. But the executive did not support Parliament to build consensus. So we saw many times that Parliament had to walk out. And there was too much resort to the courts. Okay, it weakened the independence of Parliament. It weakened it in a way that clearly any decision to be taken by the Speaker, Speaker will have to go reflect, and because he didn't want his decisions
to be overturned by the courts.
So it weakened.
But shouldn't that be a good thing? Because his decisions should be thought through properly. Because if you don't, somebody else could overturn.
Because it's not good for parliamentary practice, because you know in law we say exhaust all local remedies before you seek external remedies. The standing orders of Parliament makes provision for challenging the ruling of the Speaker, and the ruling of the Speaker is said to be final until overturned. Now, and the Speaker can overturn his own ruling if you are able to convince him. It's done so because of the sanctity of Parliament. But we lost that opportunity to engage the Speaker to see reason in building a Parliament that put the interest of the totality of Ghanaians at the fore. And so, because we had already painted him with the brush of the NDC colors, we thought that any decision he took was tainted with partisan considerations. Now, but generally, hung parliaments are weak parliaments. Because there is opportunity to engage, there is also opportunity to be transactional. Everywhere, hung parliaments. I mean, I've looked at hung parliaments everywhere. And that's why, in fact, normally we don't call this a hung parliament. Hung parliaments are really a description of parliamentary systems of government where parliaments will come, MPs elected will come together because there's a hang to form a government. But we elect our president. But because of lack of a better description, we call them hung parliament. And if you look at across all democracies, where you have a hung parliament, when there's a small disagreement, and particularly among the members of parliament that form the government, the coalition. I mean, a classical case is Israel.
Yes,
that's why it's leading in the record of having formed a lot of governments within a short period of time. So it becomes so transactional that if you don't take time, the interest of the people is subsumed under the private interest of members of parliament. And many members of parliament, many members of the public had reason to complain that our parliament was becoming too transactional. Then there was that issue of vetting of ministers of state. So parliament itself was not being consistent. Okay? And especially the minority then, they had told us that, there were some ministers they don't think that they need, and they would have helped an Akufo-Addo if they had sent those ministers away, because you have brought in better, competent ministers to be. But in the final analysis, everybody was shocked. I was not shocked. I had said that I didn't see how they would reject them. But many people were shocked that and that was the first tsunami that affected Parliament. Many people were shocked that this didn't happen. And so, yes, like I said, and the stand-ups were just too many. The fisticuffs, the very first day of Parliament, very first day, you find them. I don't think that member of Parliament is coming back to Parliament.
Which one? The one who chewed the paper?
Yes.
No, he's not coming back.
He's not coming back. He shouldn't come back. If we were coming back, they would have disqualified him. Because that is the citadel.
I think I don't know whether he lost the primaries or he didn't contest in the primaries.
Parliament is the citadel of democracy. In fact, they can be governments without parliament, but they cannot be a democracy without parliament. They cannot. So parliament is the citadel of democracy. And parliament, by consensus, says that this is the way they are going to conduct their business. One, by consensus or by division. They call it
majority rule.
Majority rule. And so, if you fail to arrive at a consensus, they call for a division. And that division is voting.
Yeah.
Okay. No member of parliament should do things that interfere with the process of determining
the decision.
No member of parliament should do such things. And again, that was a very low point. The lowest point, and up to now we still don't know who did it, was the military.
But is it a disappointment that we've not investigated, that we've not interrogated, that we've not delved into that to know who asked them to come? Or you thought it was just okay to just sweep it under the carpet, they will make progress?
Well, I think that the leaders, some people thought that it was okay. But I thought it was not okay, because if you have a military in parliament, it could as well be a military at a radio station.
Yeah.
Okay, so the military should not have entered parliament at all. Look at what happened to Trump's vigilante group when they entered Congress.
The January 6th.
Capital. Look at what has happened to them. And so I don't think that we ought to have. But all in all, it's an experience well lived. And I think that Ghanaians have come to the conclusion that that is not the best of experiences that we want to have.
I see.
It's consistent with how my people view power. My people, the Bon, they view power. It's a power, you don't divide it. Okay? You give the power exclusively to one person or one body and hold that body responsible. But when you divide power, you weaken the power. That's what my people say, my people in the Bon say. And for the first time, I'm tempted to believe that even though our constitution has created institutions, invested those institutions with certain powers, executive power or parliamentary legislative power or judicial power ought to be vested in certain specific institutions and given specific authority and power to do certain things so that we can hold them responsible. And that's what the Constitution says. And for me, the people of Ghana think that the 137, even though we had very high expectation, very high expectation, that for the first time, Parliament was going to hold the executive account. That was the whole thing. And everyone celebrated that. I don't think that we were able to see that play out. What played out in Parliament for the people of Ghana to see was that division. Look at the impeachment proceedings.
Yeah.
Again, it's a low point in Parliament. But it's good for me because my party finally benefited from the activity, the failure of Nana Akufo-Addo to remove Ken Ofori-Atta. Probably if we had removed Ken Ofori-Atta, we wouldn't have gotten this landslide.
Maybe things would have been better and you wouldn't have come to power. Great. Honorable Champon, the Parliament, Joe Sewusu, your member, says that it's the worst in Ghana's
Let me conclude by saying that, again, we were in the 7th Parliament. And I was ranking member of the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee. And go check the parliamentary records. The 7th Parliament in the history of the
Fourth Republic
passed most laws. Just yesterday, I was at the 70th birthday of Gloria Akufo, and one state attorney walked up to me and said, "You know, sir, because you've left Parliament, this time when we come to Parliament, we don't know what to do. We don't have people to assist as part of us."
I see.
So, Solomon, like Inosa rightly said, there is some practice in Parliament, and it is a thing that we all developed when we met in Parliament. Like it is said, the majority, because the democratic principles and practice allows for a majority rule.
Yeah.
So the majority would always have their way, and the minority would have their say. So if you don't find that happening, there is a disconnect. I would not falter the first deputy speaker for calling this parliament as the worst parliament, because I entered parliament with him. Initial senior as us. He entered at a by-election product before the general elections. And we met seniors who were by the time in parliament. And you see, when you start a parliament, we go through orientation. And in that orientation, you are giving the do's and the don'ts. And then you develop along the line. And one of the best places to develop yourself in Parliament is at ensuring that you attend committee meetings. And then when it comes to a law enactment, you try and then associate with the winnowing groups, because everybody who is called a good person when it comes to law making would attend the winnowing meeting. You necessarily don't have to be your committee meeting, but because you want to develop the skill and ensure that the work, like it is said, in a democracy, Parliament is to enact laws. That is the essence of Parliament. And to ensure that, you know, most people don't even know that budget is a law. It's an act of Parliament. And so you need some skill to give the best of stewardship and service to the people. And I think this Parliament, from the outset, I had a lot of hope. I was on a set just as like this when the fisticuff started that night, and I had to walk away because I was disappointed in what I was seeing. And I saw the people who were of my ilk that I started with were also disappointed. I could see on camera that most of them were disappointed with what was happening. I remember a friend said, we have hooligans in Parliament now. So unfortunate, and I felt pained. At the same time, in the same Parliament that I went before its appointment committee to be made a minister. And I'm saying this, I'm not saying this to denigrate the Parliament, but I think that we have to checkmate ourselves, because it is peers who would have that right to assert and tell ourselves right in the face that we think we should check our conduct again and give Ghana the best service Ghana deserves, because Ghana is seen as a beacon of a democracy. And like it's been said around this table, if we want to have a democracy, you must have a parliament, because parliament allows democracy to be deepened. And that is where you can cross the aisle and go to the opposite and negotiate. And you're talking about consensus building. You cannot build consensus if you don't have the courage to cross the aisle. Because how do you approach the fellow if the fellow is not opening up to you? It's not necessarily transactional, but when you enter Parliament, the chamber as it sits, the division room is the space behind the Speaker of Parliament. And when matters are heated, you find the majority leader move it this way, the minority leader move that way. That's where they are going to develop consensus on the matter. Even though before every sitting, there is a pre-meeting conference between the Speaker of Parliament and the leadership of Parliament on the agenda, how Parliament is going to be conducted, matters that are going to be brought before the House are plenary to be discussed. All these things are matters that you don't see in the open, but they happen. And so if we are not able to develop consensus, then we are having a huge problem. I'm praying that the 9th Parliament will see most of these things happen. People are beginning to build experience, because sometimes if you come into Parliament, you haven't done a term, 2, you don't really appreciate. And honestly, to be a good parliamentarian and understand the workings of Parliament, you must spend a minimum of 2 terms in Parliament before you be able to understand properly the workings of Parliament. Other than that, you just walk through the system and not really appreciate what is there. And so I pray that the 9th Parliament will do better. And I wish my friends who are still in there and are continuing, that they have to also push their weight up and get members to understand that Parliament is not a place that we have to always fight. For instance, I have to admit, when I saw the then minority, current minority, who is going to become the next majority, working in Parliament, my good friends were marching in Parliament. I said, my friend, what are we doing? This is not a place for us to march. We are not supposed to march in Parliament. You know, sir, we are not supposed to march in Parliament. No matter. No comment. Look, we can develop choruses. We can develop placards. We do all manner of things. Even our apparel, our dress code, to demonstrate send a certain message.
Signal,
You understand? Those are the practices. But such conduct.
But you don't match.
No, you don't match. Oh, no, but I gave it to them when I met them individually. I said, my friend, what was that about?
I see.
No, you see, look at this. You are the standard of measurement. Go into the Constitution. For a person to qualify to be made a minister,
must be qualified to be
must be qualified to be a member of Parliament. And there are many of our youth today hoping to be there. So you are a role model who must ensure that the following sees the best of conduct from you.
Great.
So it must reflect the character of our state.
Good one. Doc, yes, so your verdict, I want you to take it from this way. The speakership and leadership. How much of an influence or impact do you think this group had on the success or otherwise of the 8th Parliament? Speakership, leadership?
A lot because the leadership gives particular signals to their caucus members, in terms of whether they offer cooperation or they withhold cooperation. And so that leadership becomes very important in how they see not only their role in Parliament, but also how they view the extent to which they build consensus or choose to work or not to work with the other side of the aisle. But one thing that I think, even as we talk about some of the things that the 8th Parliament failed to do, one important thing they did, which I don't think has gained enough traction, is some important changes they made to their standing orders as part of a strategic plan effort. Some particular committees, for example, will now be chaired by the minority. I'm hoping that a move like that would help us, move away from the general, narrative that the majority would always have its way, even though the minority would have a say. Hopefully, some of those important changes would strengthen the institutional practices in Parliament and also give the minority, a good voice on important matters. The last thing I would add is I hope Parliament and parliamentarians as an institution will slow down on how often they want to run to the court. I understand and I can see why, given a lot of the acrimony and the adversarial nature of parliamentary politics, given the configuration of the 8th Parliament, that sometimes you had no choice but to go to the court to settle certain matters. But I prefer the use of internal mechanisms because you don't want to keep certain precedents where a time would come where it would appear as though without the permission of the court or without instructions from the court, Parliament is unable to function and exercise, its powers as enshrined. Constitution.
Great, thanks so much. A few of your messages before we go.
Before Dr. Sai goes, we need to say this. I give credit to the 8th Parliament for helping us have a new standing orders. But like Inusa said, the whole work was done by the 7th Parliament.
Very well.
It was some few procedural matters. That's why we couldn't bring a closure to it.
We didn't know whether to lay it under.
I give them credit for laying it and practicing it.
Or passing a resolution. So
the 7th Parliament, we did a lot of work. Yes.
All right, great. So just two messages. Eddie from Achimota Akufo-Addo actually did not come to power to govern Ghana. This one says, excellent moderation, Salom. Please, it's Alaji saying that well-to-do people should be denied the opportunity to choose to be NHIs. No, he didn't say so. He said they should contribute their quota. So the fresh is actually not free and is poorly implemented. Overall, Akufo-Addo can be described as a worst leader in Ghana's history. That's Kweku from La Paz. This is how we end to this edition of the program. My name is Salom Adunu. My guests, Sete Champon, Inusa Fuseni, Dr. Seth Kwapon, Elia you heard, Rashid Popo, and Joe Jackson. Catch you same time next week. Have a good afternoon.